In the year 712, another rumor shook the Eker Empire. It is said that the work of an unknown sculptor is endowed with supernatural powers and that this statuette is blessed by the goddess Erica. In the bedroom of the Viscountess, unable to get out of bed because of a serious illness, put the statue on the nearest dresser, and after only 2 days her health improved, and that story became famous among the aristocrats. After this event, statuettes of this sculptor began to be put up for auction, and each time registered a record price. They possessed not only effective power, but also artistic beauty. Therefore, at the first glance at them, a person becomes enchanted by their charm. As a result, the rumor about the statuettes and their creator reached the temple of the goddess of healing Enix. The temple sent priests to verify the veracity of the rumor, and soon the identity of the sculptor became clear. The real sculptor, shocking the empire, turned out to be the bride of the famous Archduke Rahan el-Kanix, hidden behind a veil. While at his estate, Count Brish is stunned with droplets of sweat dripping down his face. He interrogates His Excellency Ergerzog about what he just said, holding a cup of tea with shaking hands, and apologizes for perhaps misunderstanding him. The Archduke sitting next to his countess. She has bright green eyes and blonde hair with a pink bow. It is completely unclear to the girl why her father is reacting this way. The Archduke listens to repeat again what he said earlier. All this commotion started 20 minutes ago. A black carriage pulls up to the manor house. The men standing at the gate notice the carriage and try to figure out who it is. When they see the red emblem, they realize that the Archduke Rahan el-Kanix has come to visit Count Brish's estate. Rahan el-Kanix is the nephew of the emperor. 4 years ago, the previous Archduke died on the battlefield and Kanix took his place. He has been called many names: warrior, devil, executioner, terrible man, psychopath. A man with a terrible reputation, Archduke Kanix, visits Count Brish without any prejudice. He repeats to the Count once again that he wants to propose properly. The worried Count Brish spits out his tea and asks the Archduke to whom he wants to propose. Rahan el-Kanix specifies that he will ask Countess Isel Brish, who is here, to marry him. At that moment, a cup of tea falls from Count Brish's hands to the floor, spilling its contents. There was silence in the room for a moment. Countess Isel asks the Archduke about what he has just said. Looking at Isel with anger in his yellow eyes, the man asks her if she had previously promised to marry him. A month ago, something happened in the east of the capital city of Terion Street. On this day, a seafood vendor holding one of his wares shouted that fresh fish had been caught in the harbor this morning. An elderly woman comes to the man and tells him that this fish is expensive and asks for a discount of at least 5 silans. The disgruntled man tells the woman that it will be for nothing and his shop may go bankrupt. Meanwhile, in the bar, one of the drunken men picks up a wooden mug and tells the hostess holding the tray that he wants more. At a neighboring table, 2 men also drinking beer talk about the war and who saved whom, and there is loud laughter in the background. A girl in a red cloak walks past them, holding something in her hands wrapped in a white cloth. This girl is Countess Isel, who is in a hurry and thinks that she has no time at all and has to get there in 2 hours. Isel left the note on the bed, but now it is to be discovered by Alex and Harris. Upon discovering the note, the 2 young men shout indignantly across the room that the lady should not have left the manor without saying a word, because if Count Brish finds out, they are finished. As she continues on her way, Isel mentally apologizes to them for this act, but she must get to her teacher now. She needs to show him her new statue right away. On one such day when she was running off to show off her creations, the teacher strokes Isel's head and tells the Countess that her efforts are commendable and that she is becoming more and more capable. The Countess laughs sweetly as she holds the statue in her hands. On the way, Isel encounters a man coming around the corner with a bottle of beer. The bottle shatters on a stone slab, spilling its contents, enraging the man. He shouts words in the girl's wake about watching where she's going and asks where her eyes are. Isel quietly apologizes to him with the thought that she left on the sly so she can't get into any more trouble. Without looking up to show her face, the Countess promises the angry man to pay for the broken bottle. He replies to the girl that he does not care about money and asks her to start again with an apology. Izel asks herself to be patient and not to give in to the stranger's provocations. She asks the man how she can apologize to him. Noting that the girl is probably beautiful, he promises to forgive her for pushing him, but in return, asks to see the girl's face. Izel smells a strong odor of alcohol from the man, and it makes her feel disgusted. She turns around to run away, but is prevented from doing so by another man of huge build who grabs her by the shoulder and asks her where she is going. The Countess realizes that she is in trouble as there are more angry and drunken men. Looking around, Izel hopes that there are knights, but sees none, in which case she decides that if anything happens, she can take the power of her ring. The man, tired of waiting, decides to remove the hood from Izel's head himself. At that moment, she decides to run as fast as she can, but nothing happens. The drunkard grabs her arm, and the bag of engraving knives falls on the tiles, and the contents fall in two. Izel picks them up off the floor and begins to cry. Taking advantage of the moment, the stranger again grabs the Countess by the arm and asks her where she dared to run to. Archduke Rahan el-Kanox approaches him from behind and puts his sword to the drunkard's throat, demanding that he let go of the girl's hand. A man asks the Archduke what he is doing. Izel turns around and asks him not to kill him as he must pay for her broken tools, and if he is killed, he will not be able to do so. The Archduke agrees not to kill the drunkard, and after putting his sword away in its scabbard, lashes his hands demanding payment for the broken engraving knives. The man tries to resist, but Rahan squeezes his wrists harder, causing more pain. The stranger still agrees to pay and throws the sack with all his money on the ground and runs away, calling the Archduke a monster. Izel picks up the sack from the ground, thinking that it's not much money, but it should be enough to buy engraving knives, so she's lucky. The Countess thanks the mysterious man for his help and asks him to accept a bag of money as a thank you. She has to run away urgently, so she has nothing to offer but this money. The Archduke asks the girl to keep the money as he hoped for no reward, and notices that she is more concerned about it than about what has happened. The man also asks her if she knew he was going to kill that man, to which the Countess replies that she thought she was just imagining things. The Archduke asks the girl for her name. She tells him that her name is Izel and asks him his name in return. Rahan throws the hood back over her head and tells the Countess that he will tell her his name the next time they meet again. Izel arrives at her teacher Ceres' workshop sometime later, but no one is in the room, and the Countess assumes that the teacher has gone out for a while. Ceres peeks out from behind the curtain. When she sees Izel, she tells her that she thought that since she hasn't shown her nose in 2 months, she's decided to stop being her apprentice. But the fact that the Countess has come suggests that she hasn't. Laughing and covering her mouth with her hand, Izel asks her teacher to stop thinking that way because she's been studying with her for 3 years now, but she still has so much to learn. Ceres remembers the day Iziel came into her life. On the day she was out shopping for tools, a girl came across her and asked her to be her apprentice. The young countess begged Ceres to be her teacher, but she rudely told her that she would not accept anyone as a student. With a sigh of displeasure, the girl reminds Izel that she was always following her and asks her to give her the new work she is holding. As she hands her creation to the teacher, Izel informs her that there was a small commotion on the way here, so she dropped it on the ground and the statue could have broken. But she also dropped her tools, and they broke, but she was lucky enough to be compensated for them. Izel reflects on the fact that if it wasn't for the man with the unusual and mysterious gold-colored markings, Izel thinks she should have at least insisted that the man tell her his name. Ceres interrupts Izel's musings. The Countess replies to the teacher that she was just thinking and that she should go, as she had spent a lot of time talking to the stranger. Her eyes are wet with tears as she thinks about how precious one day a month is to her. The teacher asks Izel to come early next time and asks her if she will leave her sculpture in the workshop. The Countess tells her that she is going to leave it here and that she has to buy new tools. Ceres advises her to choose something better than the previous ones. Izel leaves the workshop waving at the teacher and promising her that she will come early next time. Ceres, through the closed door, loudly asks the girl not to listen to what she has to say anymore. After seeing her student off, Ceres looks at the statue at the window and wonders if Ezel is aware of her extraordinary abilities. When creating a sculpture, the most important thing is the spatial perception of light. Ezel created the sculpture in sunlight or artificial light. In truth, the Countess has long since surpassed her teacher, so it's not entirely clear who's teaching who. She fills the void with her hand sculptures. One day, when Ezel was just starting to learn, Ceres asks her if she knows how much strength she needs to use to make a sculpture, because even some grown men can't do that. And she mockingly asks what Ezel can do with her little hand. Ezel takes a small hammer to a piece of plaster and carves her first statue in the shape of a human face. Ceres is amazed at how much strength such a fragile-looking girl has. She asks Ezel if she has taken any medicine to make her stronger. The Countess tells her it's a blessing. Hera notices a ring on the girl's finger, which at first glance may seem like an ordinary silver ring. The god of war and power, Keremvis, together with the goddess of hope and healing, takes care of the Ekar Empire. Ezel confirms that it is the same ring, but she must use it carefully because she can only borrow the ring's power for one day. Ceres tells the girl that such relics are recognized by the people for their distinctive supernatural power, and she has only heard of one in her entire life. She asks Ezel where she got such a majestic thing. The girl replies that it was given to her as a gift, but she didn't answer the question of who gave it to her. That, and the big secret Ezel had kept as her heartache. And even though Ceres had been reluctant to accept her as her apprentice from the start, she was worried about her for some reason. She keeps looking at Ezel's sculpture and thinking about how she has a weak character and doesn't know how to train gifted people. When Ceres hears the sound, she thinks who is the rascal who dared to drop the bells that Ezel gave her on the floor. She turns around and sees Archduke Rahan Elkanix standing in front of her. The man walks inside, saying that they haven't seen each other in a long time, and Ceres's face looks as if she has seen a ghost. The sculptor replies to Rahman that a ghost would be better. Archduke Canix was victorious on the battlefield of Turb and returned to the capital 3 years later. Thanks to gossip, people throughout the empire learned of this immediately. Ceres asks the Archduke when he returned. After Rahan replies that he returned a week ago, Ceres crosses her arms and says that she now understands the smell of blood in the capital. Calling his interlocutor Serurtian, which is his real name, Rahan remarks that he still has a hobby of pretending to be a woman. The Archduke is angry and asks the Archduke to be silent, as it is not for him to judge. In fact, Rahan and Ceres studied together at the Imperial Academy for 6 years, so they've been friends for a long time. Ceres's real name is Saratherian Taria. He is the only son of the Marquis of Taria. Saratherian bends down to pick up the fallen bell from the floor. At that moment, Rahan asks him if his father, the Marquis of Taria, is still furious with him for his lifestyle. The blonde-haired man tells him that he is the only son in the family, and that his father does not know that he creates sculptures. Rahan asks his friend to never forget that his country is protecting him. Saratherian asks him in a rude tone what it protects him from. The Archduke replies that if he thinks so, he will come here whenever he wants, and reminds Saratherian that he still owns most of the Tarian street area, including his workshop, and adds that he can certainly hide his status, but does he have to dress up as a woman? Saratherian asks Rahane to stammer, but the latter continues to mock him and asks him if he himself really wants to have such a hobby. Saratherian, finally angry, points out to his friend that he needs to look at himself first, as he went to war not because he is loyal to his country, but to be able to legally kill people. He thinks he's a psychopath who enjoys brutally killing other people. Anyone can tell by looking at his expression on the battlefield. If you look at Ergzergun's face at that moment, you'd think he'd gone mad. He asks the Archduke how long he will think about leaving his workshop. While looking at the sculpture, Rahan tells his friend that he has recently encountered a man and asks him if this man is his apprentice. Saratherian confirms this, and he wonders why Rahan is suddenly interested in someone since he has never shown any interest in another person before, so why is he doing this now? What is he up to? Rahan's behavior gives Saratherian the creeps, and then there's that strange and terrifying look on his face. It seems to him that he has eaten something wrong, or else there is no way to explain why he is doing it. Rahan asks his friend about the sculpture if it will also be auctioned. The man confirms this, saying that he intends to do so next month. The Ikar Empire has a sculpture blessed by the goddess, but in truth it was Ceres who made it known. He recognized Isel's abilities and auctioned off her creations. Her figurines attracted a lot of attention at important auctions and were bought by aristocrats every time. And the people who bought the statue spread gossip about God's blessing. Isel has great talent, but even Saratherian couldn't imagine that her work would be spoken of as blessed by a god. Rumor has it that she's a talented sculptor, but in reality, Isel spent 3 years learning the craft from scratch. One day, Ceres suggests that Isel sell her sculpture at an auction. The girl asks if he really wants to do it. The teacher asks her if she would be interested in how much her creation would fetch. Isel answers him that she can't really answer this question, since she didn't even pay for the lessons, but studied for free. She decides to give the money from the sale to Ceres as payment for the lessons and use the rest to buy sweets. This answer puzzles her teacher. Ceres watches as Isel continues to work on the sculpture and reflects on the fact that Isel devotes herself to creating the sculpture and pays no attention to other things. And if she wanted to make a living later on, it would be difficult because of her lack of interest. And looking at the Archduke Rahan, he thinks that if he is thrown out of the house, he will remain poor. And if it were not for Rahan, he could have stayed on the streets. Ceres realizes that if he too wants to help Isel, he must explain to her the importance of money. Of course, the money from Isel's purchased creations is put into a bank account, so Ceres considers Isel lucky to find a good teacher like him. And if he gave all of Isel's accumulated money from the sales of her work, he could get her out of here so she could become independent and open her own workshop. Rahan distracts his friend from his thoughts and asks him how much the statue is worth. Saratherian tells him that the statue is not for sale and that he is going to auction it off. The Archduke throws a sack full of money on the table and says that if it's not enough, he can bring more. Hiding the sculpture behind her body, Ceres reiterates that it is not for sale and notices that Rahan has never paid attention to works of art and asks him what he has in mind. Rahan tells him that he will buy the statue of his student, so he asks him not to auction it. After hearing his request, Ceres thinks that this man does not realize the importance of the statue. So why does he need it, and what kind of behavior is this? Ceres makes a condition to his friend that if he wants to get it, he must participate in the auction and honestly present the amount of money. And if he does not like this option, he can buy it directly from the person who made it. Rahan puts his hand on his friend's shoulder and says that it is a good idea to buy from the creator, and then thanks him and leaves the workshop. At that moment, Saratherian realizes he has made a mistake. Meanwhile, Isel has already approached her house. Grabbing the rungs of the fence, she thinks about why the house is so noisy. There are voices from the manor shouting about turning the house upside down, but finding it, and someone asking if the back door has been looked at. Isel walks outside the gates thinking that she has no life, and where the knights guarding the main gates have gone. At that moment, a worried servant girl runs up to her and hugs Isel, asking her where she has disappeared to, as they were all worried. The countess pulls away from the maid and asks her where all the knights are, and what would happen if robbers came and no one was protecting the house. At that moment, men in uniform come running out of the house asking where she has disappeared to, whether she has been kidnapped, and if so, how she managed to get out. Isel reassures them by saying that she was not kidnapped at all, and that she left a letter on the table in which she wrote that she would be back soon, and even indicated in which direction she had gone. The knights reply that they saw it, but thought it was written by the kidnapper pretending to be her. Isel begins to cry because they mistake her for a child. Count Brish and his son arrive at the manor in a carriage. Isel's brother runs up to her and hugs her, asking her where it hurts. The girl tells her brother that she is fine. Count Brish turns to the knights and asks him if they have captured the kidnapper. Isel starts crying even harder, saying that there was no kidnapper from the beginning. She just left the house alone for a while and even left a letter, and she still doesn't understand why they are talking about kidnapping since she came back safe and sound. Count Brish is pleased that all is well, and noting that Isel must have been surprised, suggests that she go inside and get some rest. The maid puts her hands on Izel's shoulder and offers to escort her inside. The Countess thanks Belle. Before Izel leaves, Count Brish asks her to tell him honestly if she is sure that no one has done anything to her. The girl explains that she only went to buy engraving knives and shows them the bag of tools. On her way to her room, Izel explains to the maid that she is telling the truth and asks her not to patronize her so much. Belle asks the Countess if she thinks it's a good thing that she's so worried about her. Izel is outraged that no one believes that she wrote the letter. Meanwhile, Izel's brother tells his father that his sister has come of age and that he doesn't think she's tired of the hyper-parenting. Count Brish asks Leo to repeat what he said and asks him if he has forgotten about the incident. Leo tells his father that he doesn't forget it even in his dreams. A few years ago, Izel was offered the opportunity to borrow power from a god. The little countess had been treated horribly, and in order to save her from hell, it was necessary to tear off the head of that devil. If it can happen again, Izel must not be allowed to leave the family estate. All noble ladies like to hold all kinds of receptions and socialize with their peers. Izel wants to go to these meetings and make sculptures with someone. However, in reality, this is not possible. Izel is very unhappy and is locked up under outside guard. Count Brish replies to his son that he doesn't like it either and that it makes Izel sad. However, if she is in the manor, the demon will not get to her. Meanwhile, Izel is in her room, sitting on the sofa and resting. The door of the room is opened by the knight Sir Harris to check on the Countess. Izel asks the man with a languid look if he too has thought about her being kidnapped. Sir Harris replies that he did not think so, but Izel takes his words as an outright lie. Knights Alec and Tali are not big and simple-minded, but Harris immediately understands the mood of the aristocrats and knows what to say. The knight asks Izel where she went. When the Countess gets up from the cross, she tells him that she went to the workshop. Sir Harris asks the girl why she did not simply entrust the purchase of materials for the work to the servants. Izel looks out the window and explains her actions to the man that it would be better for her if she chose her own tools. Sir Harris concludes that the Countess is doing this on purpose, as if she has learned something. Izel turns to the knight and asks him where he is going. Harris tells her that he was summoned by Count Brish. Surprised by this answer, the girl asks him why her father called him. Harris tells her that the reason the Earl has summoned him to him is that he has failed in his primary duty of guarding his mistress. Idelle becomes embarrassed and covers her mouth with her hands, thinking that she should tell her father that Sir Harris is not to blame. At that moment, the knight notices the red marks on the Countess's wrist. Izel had forgotten all about it. The mark was left after she had been grabbed by a drunkard recently. The girl asks Harris not to tell her father and brother. Angry that someone has dared to harm the Countess, the knight comes closer to her and asks who did it, and assumes that it was the woman sculptor who did it, since Izel herself said that she went to the workshop. The girl asks Harris how he knows about her. Harris turns away from the Countess, realizing that he has said too much. He asks her if it is really important and offers to get a maid to treat her. Izel tells the knight that it is not important and asks him how he knows about her. Harris comes to the door and replies to the Countess that he followed her because he was ordered to do so and told the Count about it. Izel explains to the knight that the teacher had nothing to do with the bruises, as they were caused by a minor argument on the way to the workshop. The man asks Izel worriedly what the dispute is about. The Countess replies that she has already dealt with it, so there is no need to worry about it so much. She thought about the fact that of course it would be better if it was resolved with words. Izel realized what he mysterious dark-haired man was talking about. It wasn't an empty promise of a next meeting, but why she was thinking about this man, and why her heart felt so heavy. The knight agrees not to worry so much about the Countess and wants to add something, but Izel interrupts him and smiles sweetly, promising to be careful. He reminds Izel once again to apply ointment to the wound and bandage her wrist before leaving the room. Meanwhile, in the palace, Emperor Turban Dakar is chatting at the table. He cannot believe that Archduke Rahan himself has asked for an audience with him and tells him that he has heard that something significant has happened on the battlefield of Turbay. and therefore believes that Rahan should be rewarded for his services. Rahan replies to the emperor that he will be rewarded and will not return to the war. This answer makes Turban angry. He does not understand how he can be so fearlessly rude to the emperor himself. He asks his nephew if he is going to live in the capital. Rahan tells him that it is not a bad idea. The emperor reflects on the fact that his only nephew is always making that sly face. As a child, he laughed ringingly and was a sweet child, but now he has grown up to be a repulsive person. Turban, noticing that Rahan does not touch tea, tells his nephew that he used to love to drink it as a child. Rahan replies to his uncle that he will not drink tea. The emperor was annoyed that Rahan had been so attached to him before. He did not understand why this boy had become interested in war. Rakan asks Turban to hold a victory banquet this time. The next day at the Brish estate, Belle, her maid, runs up to Izel sitting on the veranda and informs her that she has received a letter from the imperial family for the banquet. Izel picks up the letter and cannot believe it is real. Belle notices that the count and the master do not know about it yet, and Izel is the first to open the letter. Izel had never attended a banquet until now, although curious aristocrats had sent invitations to the unknown Countess Brish. Count Brish and his son tore each of the invitations to shreds and asked the servant to dispose of them. The count and his son Leo would not allow a single invitation to reach Izel. Count Brish made a promise that he would block the way of anyone who tried to approach his youngest daughter Izel. Knight Alec reminds them that invitations are always handled by the Earl and the young lord. Harris asks if this invitation is different from the others. Izel confirms the knight's words as the letter was sent personally by the emperor, and she was invited to the banquet that will be held next week in the imperial palace. And if her father and brother are against it, she doesn't like noisy places either, so I don't want to go to any banquets. However, how can you refuse an invitation from the emperor himself? The knights realize that if the banquet is next week, it is clearly a victory banquet. Izel asks them what victory they are talking about. Harris explains to the Countess that the banquet is in honor of Archduke Canix and that he will be congratulated for his victory in the War of Turbay. The maid Belle enters the conversation and adds that Archduke Canix is the bearer of the title of Archduke and a war hero, and this war has been deprived for 10 years. Izel says she sat at home and didn't know about what was going on outside, and prepays that the Archduke is a pretty famous man. Belle explains that Archduke Canix is not just famous, he won the war, so he has a territory several times the size of the capital, and the people of the empire call the Archduke the god of war, as they consider him invincible. Smiling sweetly, Izel calls the Archduke a remarkable man. The enraged Alec replies to the Countess that he is not such a man at all, but a mad demon with a thirst for blood and a terrifying psychopath. Harris whisperedly explains his colleague's reaction by saying that Alec had to communicate with the Archduke and his squad. At that moment, Alec runs up to Izel and grabs her shoulder and asks her if she will go to the banquet at the imperial palace. The Countess answers him that she would not like to go, but she was invited by the emperor himself, so she cannot refuse. Alec gets even more angry at this answer and says very loudly that this is not right and it is dangerous. People say that the Archduke has a dark essence. If such a sincere and not knowing much about the world like me goes there, it will be wrong, and asks the Countess to refuse when she will be asked to dance and not to get into arguments with other girls. Izel asks the Harris behind her to do something about it. Alex starts to roar because the banquet hall is off limits to escorts, and so is he. The knight replies to Alec that the Earl called them and they need to go. He sends him off first, promising to catch up. After Alec leaves the room, Izel thanks him for handling it. Harris tells the Countess that Alec is exaggerating a bit, so he asks her not to take his words seriously and advises her to think twice about going to the banquet. Izel asks Harris if he is serious in what he says. The man confirms that he is, and asks her not to speak to Archduke Canix at any time, not to look in his direction at all, and to keep as far away from him as possible for her own safety. It's not clear to Izel why even such a judicious Harris would somehow make a fuss out of nothing and ask the Belle maid to keep the invitation. Izel says that her father and brother will be with her at the banquet anyway, so there is nothing to worry about. She doesn't have to worry about Archduke Canix or anyone else. As suddenly Izel hears again the demonic voice in her head calling her. She is frightened by this horrible voice from old memories, and this man's voice is still calling her after him. Because of this man, everyone is worried about her. Covering her mouth with her hand, Izel asks him to disappear from her head. The maid asks her if she is all right, and if she is in pain because Izel has turned pale. The Countess answers Belle that she is fine and has nothing to worry about. Because Izel had an unfortunate accident when she was younger, she became overprotective of her family and people around her. They forbade her to leave the house alone. Meanwhile, at the temple of the goddess Enix, a dark-haired woman sitting at a table stacked with a pile of papers is approached by the head priest of the Luz. The woman asks the man in white clerical garb to repeat what he just said. The priest tells her that her birthday is planned. The woman asks him to repeat not that, but what he told her before, what rumors he was talking about. The man tells her that people are talking about a sculpture blessed by the goddess Enix, and asks her if she has heard about it, touching the pen lying on the table. The woman asks for more details about the sculpture. The priest tells her that there is talk among the aristocrats about a mysterious sculptor with mystical powers whose statue was auctioned 2 months ago. The woman specifies what abilities we are talking about. The man continues the story that there is a rumor among the people that his sculptures have the power to cure the sick, and recently the believers have learned about a cured man. A viscountess who could not get out of bed because of a chronic illness was brought a statue to her room and she recovered in 2 days. She had bad legs, but thanks to the statue, she was back on her feet. After listening to the priest, the woman puts her feet on the table, which horrifies the man, who considers it a rude act towards the temple of the goddess. The woman asks the head priest if he himself believes the rumors. The man is surprised by such a question. She asks him again, rephrasing the question whether he believes the tale. The goddess Enix rarely grants a relic to a priest. Moreover, a relic that helps and protects her holiness subordinates cannot be endowed with such miraculous power to completely cure serious illnesses. The head priest replies to the girl that he sees no evidence at all in the veracity of this rumor, and they are investigating the hoax of this isolated incident. A woman thinks it's funny that a statue can hold the power of the goddess Enix. She starts laughing because everyone thinks the statue is a reincarnation of the goddess Enix. The priest is angered by the woman's behavior. She is the Roman Pope, Liana Anise. Liana does not conform to the rules of the temple. She has made a stunning statement. As a Roman papist, she holds great power in her hands, so she has become the chief priest. The priest, looking at the Roman papist, ponders why the goddess gave great power to such a wayward man. Liana decides that it is necessary to find the source of this loud rumor and orders the priest to send to search for 2 people. At this time in the empire, there was a great incident that did not know the Roman papist Liana Anise. Count Brish summons his son Leo to his study. Leo enters his father's room and asks him why he called him. The count tells his son that a letter has arrived from the Duke of Lesion. Leo becomes angry that Izel has received an invitation again. He doesn't understand how anyone can be so brazen about it, especially since it was sent by none other than Caesar Lesion. Caesar Lesion, a young man with curly hair of a crimson hue, is the only son of Duke Lesion. He squanders his father's money, leads a promiscuous lifestyle, and regards the lives of others as worthless trash. However, Duke Lesion, under the pretext of immense power, is unable to contain this time bomb, and after that incident, Izel must be in the manor. 8 years ago, Caesar Lesion sexually assaulted little Izel. That day, Ligus pointed his sword at Caesar with a promise to kill him. Lesion sneeringly asks the count if he has proof that he molested his sister. Leo threatens Lesion that he will cut off his hands and feet. Caesar again asks if Izel told him that he had been indecent towards her, and if so, maybe he will tell everyone. Leo is quite angry, but his anger is restrained by his counselors. The count tells Caesar that Izel is now very shocked and so frightened that she can't open her mouth. She can't talk to anyone or go outside her room, so he can't get her to testify. At that moment, Duke Lesion comes to his back from behind. He tells young Mr. Brish that if he is telling the truth, it is a terrible accident. But maybe there was no victim and no incident. Maybe the little girl lied and falsely accused his son. Then why should they pay for something they did not do? Unable to get a confession from the Lishan family, Leo Brish went to the emperor. Kneeling before him, he tells His Majesty that a terrible crime was committed against their beautiful Isel, but that it was turned a blind eye. The king answers the count that without evidence and witnesses will not be able to hold a trial against the Duke of Lishan, and putting his hand on the shoulder of the count, asked for forgiveness from the bottom of his heart. That day, Count Brish cried very bitterly and for the first time regretted that he had taken an oath of allegiance to the imperial family. Her father and older brother could do nothing but lock their beloved daughter and sister behind the doors of the house. For days and days she didn't speak or smile. She slept all the time and even forgot about food. Her will to live was gone. After a long time, Leo goes into his sister's room. She is sitting on a chair near the window with tools and a figurine she made scattered around her. The count picks up the wooden figurine from Paul and asks Isel what she has made. Without waiting for an immediate answer, he begins to speculate that the silent figure looks like a cat or a dog. But judging by the pointy ears, it looks more like a cat. Isel decides to answer that it is a kitten. Since the mama cat had 3 kittens in the garden, she decided to make the first kitten with yellow stripes. Leo is happy that his sister is finally talking long after the incident. He tells Isel that he wants her to finish the kitten and give it to him when he gets a job. She agrees, and at that moment Leo runs up to her sister and hugs her tightly. At such a young age, Isel has experienced something terrible, but not out of shock and fear. She fulfills her older brother's request. Leo offers his sister to make the remaining 2 kittens so that he won't be lonely. Isel's father enters the room and smilingly asks to give the second kitten to him. The knights join them and ask to make them a figure too. Thanks to the tremendous support she received from the people around her, she soon returned to normal life. And after 3 years, she was back on her feet and found the will to live by creating sculptures. She crafted figurines and gradually regained her inner balance. Along with her craftsmanship, Isel herself grew. But it was hard to put the nightmare out of my mind when I was looking for an adult, and the care and concern of my relatives did not stop. One day, a letter arrived from Duke Lishan. Leo was outraged by it and suggested that Caesar Lishan might be asking him to chop off all his limbs. In a letter, Caesar Lysian wrote that as they know he and the young mistress Brish are bound by a bond of fate, he believes that the young mistress also wishes to marry him and that this bond will continue. Lishan proposes that Isel marry him. After reading the letter, Leo calls Caesar a psychopath and asks his father if he will turn a blind eye to this blatant nonsense. He's going to go and snap his neck right now. Count Brish tells his son that if nothing is done this time, Isel will not be able to bear it anymore, and thinks that it is necessary to carefully prepare a plan of revenge and make sure that Isel does not find out about it. So they began to prepare for revenge against Duke Lysian and still received other letters with similar content. Count Brish tells his son that young Mr. Lysian has personally come to give the Duke's letter and puts the letter on the table. Leo reads the letter and realizes that they have been sent a promissory note. 5 years ago, there was an incredible drought in southern Brish territory. There was a crop failure, and in order to help his people, the Earl of Brish wrote a promissory note. The Count explains to Leo that he owes all this debt to Duke Lysian and that he wants to make a marriage of convenience with Isel. Leo angrily tells his father that Lysian is worse than any beast as he threatens to buy Isel. Count Brish replies to his son that surely he will not even think of following these words, and if there is not enough estate and territory to pay the debt, they will sell all their property, but will never give their dear Isel to this devil. He adds that once was enough, and now they will protect Isel at all costs. Their dialogue is overheard by Isel standing outside the door. And Sunday morning, Ergerzog Canix urgently summoned the knights of the capital. By 9 a.m. Sunday morning, the knights of the capital must assemble on the training ground of the imperial palace. Alec, displeased with this order, calls the Archduke of Canix a strange man. Count Brigg notices that his daughter has an unhealthy complexion and asks her if she is really all right. Her brother also decides to ask Isel if she is sure, or if she will be fine alone at home. Isel replies to her brother and father that she has a bit of a headache, but she has just taken her medicine and is perfectly fine now, and besides, she will be with Sir Harris, so there is nothing to worry about. Knight Alec starts screaming so loudly as if he had swallowed a steam train trumpet that the other knight's ears bleed. He doesn't understand how that psychopath Archduke Cannix came up with such a crazy idea to hold an emergency draft on Sunday morning, and thinks that there is a total lawlessness in this country. Alec begs Harris to switch places with him and offers to stay to guard the young mistress. Harris steadfastly refuses his colleague's request. Before leaving, Alec asks the young mistress not to open the door to strangers, and acquaintances are better off too. It is strange for Harris that he is the one who tells her this. Isel waves to the knights and tells Sir Harris about how Alec is always so lively. The knight replies to Isel that he asked her to keep a good eye on her. Isel tells the knight that she has a favor to ask of him. She asks him if she can go quickly to the workshop. She just needs to look at something and then she will come right back and promises that it will be their secret. Harris asks the mistress if she is sure she will keep her word, and after confirming this tells her that she can't refuse her. It was a surprise to Isel that Harris obeyed her requests. And last time, because of a kidnapping incident that never happened, those words didn't work after Plan B, where she dared to climb over the wall. Anyway, she is going to quickly go to the teacher and give the new sculpture for sale. Isel is going to ask the teacher to auction the large sculpture made in the workshop. She gave the little figures she made at home to people close to her. On one of these days, the maid Belle asked her mistress what she would make this time. Isel replies to the maid that she will be making a chipmunk. Belle calls the chipmunk a very cute animal and asks her to give it to her. Although she has only these sculptures, they can also be bought, but first she has to save up at least a small amount of money. When she gets to the door of the workshop, Isel decides to ask the teacher to explain everything to her. The Countess turns around sharply, noticing something but not seeing anything, decides that she has imagined it, and knocks on the door to ask if the teacher is inside. Sir Harris is watching Isel from the corner, and after watching her, he is convinced that the young lady has not lied and has gone to the workshop. The knight decides to wait here as he can't leave because the young mistress might get into trouble again, but he won't go to the workshop as he made Isel a promise. At that moment, two other knights in white suits approach him. The blonde one calls Sir Harris and tells him that they have been away for a long time. Sir Millen explains to the dark-haired knight, Sir Garrett, that he and Sir Harris shared barracks in the war. Sir Jerry tells Harris that he is pleased to meet him, but he wonders what he is doing here if he had orders to report to the gathering. Harris explains to them that he is to guard the Earl of Brish's daughter. Sir Millen reminds him that his superior Archduke Cannix has told him to report to the assembly without exception. At this point, Harris realizes that he is the only one left in the city. Sir Millen tells him that this is unacceptable. The Archduke has issued an order allowing one knight to be left on each estate, so there is nothing to worry about. Sir Harris replies to Millen that this conversation is going nowhere. Millen asks his colleague where the young lady is. Harris points to a small workshop. Millen decides to escort the young countess back to the manor and orders Mayor Harris to go to the Imperial Palace immediately as Sir Jegret is escorting the young lady. Sir Harris explains to them that the lady is afraid of strange men and asks for permission to take her to the manor and then to the Imperial Palace. Millen again reminds him that His Excellency has personally ordered him to report to the palace immediately, and yelling at him rebukes him for not being familiar with his temper and disobeying an order will affect Count Brish. Harris is not to blame for the fact that this deranged Archduke Cannix actually said it. Millen orders Sir Jegret to escort Isel quickly and promises Sir Harris that he will take the young mistress under his responsibility and protection. Jegret asks Harris to follow him. The knight of the Brish family asks Millen to take care of the young mistress in that case before leaving. Millen asks his colleague not to worry about it. He sighs with relief as he walks away. Milan turns back and sees Archduke Rahan el Cannix sitting on a white bench. Bowing to him, he tells the Archduke that he has sent the guarding knight away and asks the Lord what he should do next. Erzgerog asks Milan to come closer. The knight asks what about the guards for the young countess. Rahan allows him to go but does not say a word about it to anyone, and after a long wait for an answer, rudely demands an answer. Milan replies to His Excellency that he understands. As he turned away, he thought about how confidently he had answered the Archduke. He became very frightened. Another of the Emperor's knights notes that the Archduke is in a very good mood today. His partner asks him if he really thinks so, because this is very rare. Falling to his knees and with his face on the floor, Sir Milan ponders that he is disturbed by the sudden order to assemble and the job given to him and Sir Jegrit in a sense they do not understand. The gathering of the knights in the palace and this loose pebble in the market street. He mentally apologizes to Sir Harry's for lying to him, as he was forced to do so by that horrible man, Archduke Rahan el-Canox. Meanwhile, Izel enters the workshop and greets her teacher. Irera says hello and reproaches the Countess for not coming to the workshop for a long time. Isel tells the teacher that she has something to show him and that she has taken care of it. At this point, Izel thinks that if her father Count Brish realizes his thoughts of selling the estate, territories, and his title, this huge sum of money will go to Duke Legion, and she decides to help at least something to her father. Izel wants to say something about her statues, but is interrupted by Archduke Canox entering the workshop to say that they have met again. The Countess is surprised to meet this man who once helped her so unexpectedly. Saratyrian, watching from the sidelines, does not understand how they know each other and why Rahan knows the name of his apprentice. Rahan notices how casually he and Isel met. Izel agrees with the Archduke. Saratyrian mentally calls his friend a liar, as it was definitely not an accident, and Rahan had definitely waited for some time and planned the whole thing. Izel reminds Rahan that they did not get to know each other properly, and that she is very grateful to him and wants to apologize. Saratyrian is trying to figure out how Rahan knew that Izel was coming here today if he didn't even know it, and how he could like Izel's work and think he was wrong to tell him to buy the statue personally from the creator then. Isel asks her teacher if he knows the man. Ceres wants to explain, but Rahan intervenes and tells her that her teacher is his first close friend and that they were roommates at the academy. Saratyrian thinks that Rahan is obviously crazy since he said they were roommates, so now Izel will realize that he's pretending to be a woman. Izel doesn't squeak at this and smiles and replies that she understands now. Saratyrian is surprised that his student believes it so easily. In addition, he has known him for 10 years, and this is the first time he has called him his friend and close friend because he was his errand boy. Izel asks his teacher if he has had the same deep knowledge of painting and sculpture since his days at the academy. Saratyriano was constantly bullied because he could not fight back. As a child, one day Saratyriano was sitting on the lawn drawing portraits in his notebook. He is approached by 2 boys. One of them asks him why he doesn't just exhibit his drawings that he draws all the time at the academy. Another boy snatches his notebook out of Saratyrian's hands, asking to see since he can draw more. Saratyrian asks him to give the notebook back. The boy who took the notebook tells Saratyrian that if she values her painting so much, he should go and get it himself. He throws the notebook towards the bushes where another young man, Rahan el-Canox, is sitting. The notebook lands on his head. Rahan asks who did it and demands the culprit to come to him. The boys who teased Saratyrian look toward the bushes where the notebook fell and see before them the Emperor's nephew, the next candidate for the title of Archduke and a crazy violator of the rules of the Imperial Academy. They apologize to such an important person and run away, saying that they are sorry. Rahan approaches Saratyrian and gives him his drawing notebook. The young man apologizes to the Emperor's nephew for the incident. At that time, Saratyrian did not know that he had escaped from a fox, but he had met a tiger. Rahan asked him to run to him for water, but he tried to resist, asking why he should do it. Rahan replied that he had helped him then and he owed him. Then, the Saratyrian brought him food. Rahan tells him that he is hungry and asks him to steal bread and cheese from the canteen. Saratyrian replies to his neighbor that he has been caught once before and put under house arrest. The teacher would ask if Rahan el-Canox was present in class, and Saratyrian would answer for him. But that time the trick didn't work. The teacher summoned Saratyrian and asked him about Rahan and why he answered for him. Meanwhile, young Rahan was sleeping on the lawn with his head covered with a book. This devil in the guise of a man has ruined the life of Saratyrian in the academy. And this summer, he seemed to melt like ice cream, and probably because of this, he began to show emotions. The Archduke notices that Isel has an unhealthy complexion and asks her if she is overworked. Saratyrian is angry and thinks he has a bad complexion from such unexpected turns. Rahan puts his hand on Isel's forehead to check for a fever. Saratyrian can't believe what he's seen, that he's witnessed such strange behavior from the Archduke. Rahan turns to his friend and asks Isel, through clenched teeth, if Saratyrian has been torturing her with sculpting. The young mistress denies it. Saratyriag seems to think that Rahan has eaten something wrong if he's behaving like this. The Archduke advises Isel to drink a cup of hot tea. His friend is still outraged by this behavior, and his facial expression seems strange to him, since a man like Rahan cannot have it. With a kind smile, Rahal Elkanox asks his friend to bring a cup of tea. Saratyrian comes to his senses after reflection and heads to the other room to fetch tea for Isel. This day for him was the scariest day he had ever lived. His body was covered in goosebumps after seeing Rahan's face, so he will definitely not sleep tonight. Saratyrianu pours tea, wondering if the Archduke has not poisoned himself and really wants to buy the statue of Isel. More specifically, he wonders how long ago Rahan became interested in sculptures. Archduke Canix approaches the Saratyrian from behind. The sculptor is very frightened and asks his friend why he has come here. With a threatening look, Rahan asks Saratyrian if he has something urgent to do. Saratyrian asks the Archduke why scare him like that if he's already carrying tea. Rahan asks his friend again if he said he had to go somewhere else right now. Saratyrian asks him indignantly when he has ever said that to him. Rahan looks at his friend with a look that tells him to play along. Saratyrian gritted his teeth and told him that if he wanted him to leave, he would, because he was his master. Rahan puts his hand on his friend's shoulder and tells him that he keeps forgetting to do one thing, that this building doesn't belong to him, and that if he doesn't get out for a while, he'll be out of here forever. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Knights training ground, a man in a white robe notices that nothing has been happening for a long time and asks a nearby knight if he finds it strange. His Excellency ordered them to gather here, but he is not here. The Brish family knights arrive at the training ground. Vice Captain Leo approaches Sir Damon. The knight, distracted from his notes, greets Leo. The Count apologizes for the indelicacy, but he wonders where his superior Archduke Canix is. It's a question that has caught the Imperial Knight off guard. Sir Jason tells Leo that an urgent matter has forced Archduke Canix to be late. Leo asks him if this is the reason why the knights have to wait, and if the Archduke really has some urgent business to attend to. Sir Jason, sweating with fear, confirms this. Leo Brish then agrees to wait a little longer and orders the 2nd Division to wait at the ready. Sir Jason is tormented by the remorse of having lied to him and mentally apologizes to Sir Leo for having done so, for the point of his deception is that today's gathering is meaningless. On this day, in the early hours of the morning, a frantic Archduke Rahan asks a knight to repeat what he has just ordered him to do. Sir Jason repeats verbatim the order, which says that in order to gather all the Imperial Knights on the training ground, the Archduke has issued an order to summon them from all over the capital. Archduke Rahan asks the knight to hold the other arrivals until sundown. Sir Jason runs after the departing Archduke and asks him where he is going, for a gathering of the knights of the capital is planned. Rahan tells him that he knows and remembers this and asks him to do as he says. Jason doesn't understand how he can keep all the knights on the training ground until sunset. One of the knights retaliates by asking why they were called on their legal day off. Another complains that he didn't even have time for breakfast because of it. Sir Jason keeps asking me what excuse he has for keeping them there. He even thought of telling the knights to pull all the weeds on the training field. He's angry with the Archduke. Meanwhile, in the workshop, Rahan continues to talk to Isel. He places a cup of tea with a freshly made Saratyrian in front of her. The young mistress thanks the man for his concern and asks him if he is sure that nothing has happened to the teacher. Before that, Saratyrian left the workshop saying that he had to go urgently because he remembered that he had some business to finish. The Archduke convinces Isel that there is no need to think about Ceres. Isel tells the man that she has noticed an unhealthy complexion. The Archduke suggests that Izel is very close to her teacher, and that it is so respected that they are closer than usual teachers and students. Izel laughingly denies this, as she and the teacher have not been friends for the 10 years he has been with him. The young mistress realizes that the man sitting in front of her has helped her a lot, but she still doesn't know his name. After placing the cup on the table, the man calls Izel his name and asks her why she was surprised, and her eyes rounded. Izel replies to Rahan that nothing happened, but that she thought he had read her mind because she wanted to ask him his name. The Archduke tells the young lady that if she wants, he can read her mind right now. Izel laughingly refuses him, as she would be uncomfortable and therefore should not do it, but she would like to repay him for his help now. The Archduke agrees and tells Izel that he likes her sculpture. The girl mentally calls herself a fool and thinks it is just a misunderstanding. Izel asks Rahan if he wants to see the sculpture right now. The man confirms this and tells her that he learned about the sculpture from series. When Izel has calmed down, she tells Rahan that she is a little shy about showing her work to strangers. The Archduke replies that if she feels uncomfortable around him, he would be happy for Izel to give him one statue as a gift. The young mistress asks Rahane what he wants her to sculpt. The young mistress asks Rahane what he would like her to sculpt. Izel understands him and tells him that she is going to get her tools and materials. It is not strange that every time Rahan speaks to her, she feels awkward, and a wave of anxiety envelops her. When Izel returns with the tools, she notices that Rahan has cleaned up the table. The man explains to the Countess that he did it to make her work more comfortable, and Izel puts the tools on the table and calls Rahan very courteous. The Archduke tells Izel that he has lived the life of a military man for a very long time, so he has retained the habits of preparing in advance. At this point, his expression changes to concerned. Izel asks Rahan what is wrong. The Archduke explains to Izel that he noticed a change on her wrist and asks her if it originated the day he saved her. Izel confirms this and reassures Rahan that it is almost gone and no longer hurts, and adds that her wounds heal surprisingly quickly. Rahan says through gritted teeth that he knew he should have cut off both arms and legs of those men. Izel questions him about what he just said, but Rahan smiles sweetly and tells her that he didn't say anything. Noticing a basket in the corner of the room, Rahan asks Izel what is in it and if she has accidentally brought Ceres a cookie, cake, or something similar. Izel realizes at that moment that she has forgotten why she came to the workshop. Rahan comes to realize that Saratyrian and Izel have a teacher-student relationship, and that his friend must have lied to him. At this point, the young mistress considers whether to tell Rahan that she has come here to ask the teacher to sell her work. Izel decides to tell the man that that is not why she came to Ceres. No matter how many sculptures Izel makes, she can't pay the price Lycian demands. Even selling her title and land won't be enough, but she can't just sit idly by. Count Brish had made a promise to Leo, and first of all to himself, that they would do anything not to give up Izel, even if it meant betraying the emperor. If Izel does marry Caesar Lycian, if she can really stand the man, she can help her father. Izel felt sick at the thought, covering her mouth with her hand and sweat pouring down her face in horror. Rahan jumps up from his chair and asks if she's all right, but not getting an answer, he asks her to breathe calmly and relax, to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. After practicing this breathing, Rahan asks Izel if everything is all right now. The girl is relieved that she feels much better and thanks him for always helping her. Archduke Canix asks Izel what more he can do for her, and notices that the young lady has an unhealthy look on her face and asks what is wrong. Izel replies to Rahan that it is nothing, but that she will have to marry, and if she does so, she will have to come to the workshop and tell the teacher that she will no longer be able to learn from her. But now she is fine, but it looks like she will not be able to make a statue for Rahan today, and apologizes for that, but promises to be more energetic next time. At this point, Archduke Canix hits the table, and there is a large round crack on the corner from the impact. Rahan for Wales says that he miscalculated the force a bit, and it looks like the table is going to take a long time to fix. Izel asks the man if he has hurt himself. Rahan replies to the Countess that it still hurts a little, but he is not hurt. The young mistress asks Rahan to give her his hand and then starts kneading his muscles to make them feel better. She explains this knowledge by saying that her older brother often asks for it, so she knows how to do it. When she has finished kneading her arm, she asks Rahan if everything is all right now. The man watches Isel's actions in silence and blushes in embarrassment. Isel apologizes to the man as she is embarrassed and does not know what to say. She explains that she has often done this to her brother, so now it is out of habit, and apologizes again for making him embarrassed. Rahan asks Isel not to apologize as she has helped on the contrary. Rahan again pretends that his hand still hurts. Isel tells the man that the massage didn't work properly because of the seal and asks him to take off his glove. Sitting down on the chairs, Isel kneads Rahan's arm again. The Archduke reminds the girl that she was just talking about her problem and he wants to help her with it. He asks Isel to be sure to call him any time if she needs help. Isel tells the man that he has helped her enough as it is. Meanwhile, Saratherian, wandering near the workshop, calls his friend an immoral landlord and is outraged that Rahan has chased the owner out of his house. No matter who owns the building, it is still his. The two people standing behind Saratherian wonder why he's screaming if she's crazy. Biting his nails in anger, he continues to ponder the fact that although he is grateful to Rakan for giving him the workshop so that he won't be homeless, he is still thinking about what he is up to, why he kicked him out and left him alone with Iseult. Saratherian believes that if a man dies next to Rakan, he won't even bat an eye. He only showed his interest once, and that was around the end of his second year at the academy. The young Saratherian asks his roommate Rahan where he is going again instead of classes. Rahan replies to his friend that he has something he needs to find. Saratherian reminds him that he missed his last lesson on the laws of the Empire, so the teacher will not let him get away with it if he skips class again. Rahan replies to his friend that he knows about it, so he asks him to think of something. Saratherian warns Rahan that if this happens 1 or 2 more times, he may be expelled. Each time Rahan Elkanix leaves the dormitory and goes looking for something. A little later, Rahan comes out of the workshop and tells his friend that he is handing Isel over to him. Isel follows and asks the teacher where he went and if he authorized his urgent business. Saratherian pretends to answer that it was an accident and thinks that he had nowhere else to go, so he just walked from side to side and killed time that way. Isel informs the teacher that the table is broken, so it needs to be replaced. Saratherian runs over to his cracked desk and asks why it broke. Isel explains to him that the table cracked because a hand hit it, and the table is probably just very old. Saratherian tells Isel that it is not old at all and reminds her that it has not been a year since she bought the table, and she should remember that. On the day of the purchase of the wooden table, Ceres invites Isel to look at it. He tells her that the table is very expensive, but he liked it so much that he bought it anyway. Isel is pleased that it is sturdy. Saratherian realizes that only one monster could break a sturdy wooden table with his bare hands, and that's Rahan Elkanix. And he hasn't even finished paying off the installments for it. Looking at his furious friend, Isel asks him to watch the teacher. After calming down a bit, Saratherian asks Isel what she wanted to say when she came here. The young mistress leaves and tells the teacher that she will tell Ani the next time they meet. A carriage has pulled up to the workshop. Rahan asks Isel to get in it. The countess tells the man she doesn't need to and will take the postal carriage, but this one is too expensive for her. Rahan explains to Isel that he has already paid for everything, so there is no need to worry about it. Raising her hands, the young mistress thanks Rahan for his concern and tells him that she can still walk alone. Rahan realizes that he can't just talk her out of it and decides to lie, saying that Ceres is worried about her, so she asked him to walk her. Isel is surprised by this and asks if the teacher really said that. Rahan confirms this and adds that Ceres was worried because her complexion was not good. Isel comes to think that if the teacher really said so, then she can't leave the workshop. Rahan puts his hand on Isel's chest and tells her that if she will let him take care of making sure she gets home safely, he will be very grateful. Isel gives him her hand and agrees, and asks if they are going to Lawrence County. Sitting in the carriage opposite Rahan, Izel thinks about how embarrassed she is to be riding alone in a carriage with a man she doesn't know for the first time. She feels his eyes on her and comes to think that she was only mistaken and that he is only walking her home and that she is overreacting and is ashamed that she dared to think otherwise. The young mistress decides it's better to look outside because she won't get to see the social life anymore and won't be able to make friends and won't even be able to see people. Isel arrives in the desired area and asks the coachman to stop here, and getting out of the carriage, thanks Rahan for seeing her off and will go on her own. The Archduke calls out to the girl and bids her farewell until we meet again. As Izel leaves, she thinks that they will probably never meet again. She is grateful to him for the many times he has cared for her during this brief encounter. Rahan asks the coachman to wait here while he goes and make sure the lady gets home safely. As he watches Izel enter the grounds of his house, he thinks that they will meet again and then returns. Izel goes into her room, hoping that no one has returned yet. But at that moment, the knights return to the manor and call for the young lady. Izel answers Sir Alec that she is in her room. After changing into a sky blue dress, she comes out to the knights and asks how their gathering went. Alec asks the young mistress if anything has happened during his absence. Izel answers him that nothing has happened, and she is perfectly fine. Sir Alec tearfully tells the girl that he should have left the training ground and come to the manor to be watched by more than one Sir Harry's, because he was very afraid for her. Noticing that Sir Alec is covered in dirt and grass, Isel asks him if he went to pull weeds instead of practicing and removes leaves from his hair. The knight asks the young mistress how she found out about it. Alec knew that Archduke Canix was a complete psychopath, but he had no idea that he could summon his knights on a weekend morning to pull weeds on an imperial training field. In fact, the Archduke didn't even show his nose, and they worked all day under the scorching sun. Sir Alec suggested that the other knights take revenge on Archduke Canix for this, and tell the Emperor about it. One of the knights tells Alec that he's out of his mind, because if they complain, they'll all get 10 times as much. Sir Harris calls the young mistress to him for a moment. Izel asks him what is wrong. Harris asks Izel if she was surprised that the knights were looking for the Archduke of Canix. Izel guesses that they are all talking about Rahan, since he was wearing a knight's uniform, and while he was helping her, she saw his sword. So Rahan is Archduke Canix. Sir Harris asks Izel if the white-haired knight has been rude and insensitive to her. Izel replies that he had not, thinking it was about Rahan. Harris tells the young mistress that he didn't want to leave her for a man she didn't know, but he was forced to do so. Izel thinks that if Rahan Canix is Archduke, he must know that she is Countess Brish. The knight admits to Izel that he was standing outside the workshop to guard her, but it is a mystery to him what she was doing in the building itself. Izel replies to Harris that she knew he had followed her. Harris explains to the girl that he went after her just in case, as there was no chance of anything happening. Izel tells the knight that nothing has happened and yawns, covering her mouth with her hand and telling him that she is tired, so she is going to rest. As she climbed the stairs, Izel pondered whether Rahan had been polite to her because he had to or because she was his friend's apprentice. The maids are cleaning the lord's room and discussing the case of the butler who has been seriously punished again. The green-haired maid tells Belle that he should be careful not to get caught next time. Noticing her partner's hand, Belle asks her if she is all right, since there was so much blood. The maid replies to Belle that she just hurt herself while peeling potatoes, and showing her hand says that the blood stopped very quickly, and not even a trace was left. Belle asks her if this is true because there was indeed a lot of blood. Wiping the table, her partner tells Belle that the knights have covered the manor with the protection of the goddess Enix. Belle asks what she is talking about. The girl explains to her that if the knights get injured during the training, they will be cured immediately. The girl asks Belle if the young mistress really did it all. Belle confirms it, saying that there are many of them on the estate. The maid, admiring the sculptures, says that she would like to have a hobby like the young mistress, and notes that the statuettes are very professionally made. Belle replies that the young mistress's statues are very expensive. Izel goes into her room and asks the maids if they have finished cleaning, as she is very eager to rest. Belle tells her that everything is ready and she can go in. The only thing left to do is to close the window she opened to air out the room and change the water in the vase of pink flowers. Belle asks the maid Anna how long ago they changed the water in the flowers. The maid answers Belle that they changed it a week ago and it is probably too early. Belle asks Anna not to break anything like yesterday. Her partner advises her to put the flowers on the window to let the sunlight fall on them. Anna promises to return soon and makes the young mistress have a nice vacation. Iselle wishes Belle good luck and allows her to take her time. Anna tells mistress that they still have a lot of work to do, so they'd better hurry as they still need to finalize the dress she'll wear to the banquet. Iselle remembers that this time she is going to the banquet at the Imperial Palace for the first time in a long time. After leaving the young mistress's room and wishing her a good rest, Belle tells Anna that at these flowers they didn't change the water last week. They haven't done it for a month. It is the day of the banquet at the Imperial Palace in honor of the Archduke Cannix's victory. Sir Leo, the son of Count Brish, arrives at the palace under the arm of his younger sister Iselle, dressed in a snow-white bouffant gown. All the guests are discussing the arrival of Sir Leo Brish and the mysterious lady beside him. It is the first time they have all seen her, as Iselle has never attended a banquet before because of one terrible incident. One of the girls at the banquet asks the red-haired lady named Rose if she knows who this girl is by any chance. Another notes that it is the first time Sir Leo has come to the banquet with a girl. Sir Leo asks his sister if everything is all right and asks her to tell him if she's uncomfortable, and since it's her first time at the banquet, she'll probably be very worried. Iselle smiles sweetly and tells her brother that this is the first time she has worn a dress and shoes to such an event, so she is really a little nervous. It's a completely new experience for her, so she's a little nervous. Leo tells his sister with a warm smile on his face that today he will be able to look at the most beautiful and charming girl in the empire, and adds to his words that this dress suits her very well. Iselle replies to her brother that it is her mother's dress, and Belle and Anna fitted it for her, and luckily this dress fits her perfectly. Watching his sister Leo Brish ponders that this is not to be missed, and at the next banquets Iselle will be wearing many more dresses, and he really wishes their mom was here right now. At that moment, Mrs. Rosa, wearing a brown gradient dress and a fan in her hand, comes up to greet the Count. She notes that she has not seen him in the palace for a long time, and that it is the first time she has met the lady next to him, so she asks him to introduce them. And with a sideways glance at the girl behind her, he tells Leo that the others are also interested in this beautiful lady. Leo Brigg looks angrily at the man standing behind Mrs. Rosa as he embraces Leo's sister. The red-haired mistress does not understand where the girl who arrived at the banquet with Leo came from. At that moment, Iselle notices César Lézion in the crowd, holding a glass of red wine in his hand and a smirk on his face. Now, as in the past she has no power, she can't say anything to him. Iselle clings to her brother in fear of César. Leo tells her sister that he sees him too, and tells her not to worry as he is next to her, and suggests she go sit down. Iselle didn't want to meet César Lézion's eyes here, but that's how it turned out. Sir Leo apologizes to Mrs. Rosa for having to go and not being able to communicate. Rosa tries to say something to him but fails. The other ladies behind her back are whispering among themselves, saying that Mistress Rose has attacked Sir Leo and braided that ridiculous ponytail. One of them asks them to keep their voices down as she can hear them. Rosa does hear them though and throws a shut-up look at them. The girls become frightened. Mrs. Rosa sees off Leo and the girl who came with him with a glance, and reflects on the fact that he continues to reject her heart so ruthlessly. Meanwhile, the gentlemen are talking to Count Brish. One of the stout men asks the Count if the rumors that the imperial knighthood has been transformed are true. The Count turns around and asks the man in the red suit about what he has just said. The gentleman notices that Count Brish's mood has changed dramatically and asks him where he was looking again. Noticing Count Leo at the end of the hall, the man asks if the lady next to Sir Leo is his daughter, and since she had not attended the banquet because of ill health, as they knew, the man asks if the young lady is better. The gentleman looking at the young lady's appearance notes that she is light and beautiful as a violet, and very much like his late wife, who still protects her with her soul. Another blonde-haired gentleman in a black suit tells the Count that his son can't take his eyes off her and has fallen in love with her at first sight. The third man also tells the Count that his son has also fallen in love with the young lady, and the first man says that his son wants to ask the Count's daughter to dance. Angry, Count Brish reminds Viscount Tenby, the First Lord, that he asked about the changes in the knighthood and explains to him that the War of Turb is over and Archduke Canix has returned, so a special knighthood has been formed again, and there will be an announcement soon. The men do not understand why the atmosphere has changed so much and guess that they must have said something wrong. Count Brish, gritting his teeth in anger, asks if anyone else has any questions for him. At that moment, Duke Lieschen comes up to them and asks what interesting things are going on here and if anything special has happened during this time. The gentlemen greet the Duke, and one of them tells him that there are rumors that at a recent auction, he bought the very sculpture of a mysterious sculptor. The Duke is surprised that people are already talking about it. Viscount Tenby notes that this auction was particularly tense. Duke Lieschen explains to them that all the value is in the artwork. Another gentleman asks the Duke if the rumors that the statue has mystical powers and can cure diseases are true. The Duke replies that if it is true, he will be very surprised and informs the people around him that in a few days there will be a formal dinner at which his statue will be admired. But when he feels like inviting all the people present at this banquet, of course, and Count Brish, and naturally he hopes the young lady will come too. Count Brish angrily asks Duke Lieschen to repeat what he's just said. The Duke tells Count Brish that he hopes he has carefully read the letter he sent. The Duke tells Count Brish that he hopes he has carefully read the letter he sent. Count Brish is about to reply to Lieschen, but is interrupted by the word that His Excellency Archduke Canix has arrived. Isel sees Rahan entering the hall. She can't believe her eyes that Rahan is really the Archduke of Canix, but worse is how she has behaved towards His Excellency. Isel asked him to accept a bag of money taken from the drunks as her thanks. She asked him to give her hand so that she could give him a massage for his severe pain, and after thanking him for seeing her off, she ran away as fast as possible so that he wouldn't know where she lived. And all this she did with Rahan el Canox, and Isel does not understand what to do in such a case. She does not understand why Archduke Canix continued to help her. Maybe because he is a friend of her teacher, and so he decided to befriend his student. But everyone said that Archduke Canix was a brutal killer with a passion for war. But Rahan, whom Isel met, is the kindest, polite, and gentle man she knows. She was sure to touch his hand, and it was warmer than the others. Isel turns around to get out of Rahan's sight, but is stopped by Leo and asked where she is going. At that moment, everyone is informed that His Majesty the Emperor has arrived. Leo, bowing, tells his sister that since the Emperor has arrived, they must stay where they are and asks her to wait a little longer. Isel looks up briefly to survey the surroundings and sees the Emperor standing in front of her, standing next to her father, Count Brish. It had been days since she had last seen the Emperor, and she wondered if he remembered her. Archduke Rahan el Canox approaches the Emperor and bows to greet him. Isel comes to think that the Emperor really doesn't remember her, as it has been a long time. The Emperor informs everyone that tonight's banquet is in honor of Archduke Canix for winning the 10 Years' War of Turb. Rahan thanks the Emperor for this banquet in his honor and tells all that they may enjoy it. The orchestra plays violins. The guests dance a waltz. The celebration has finally begun. Leo asks his sister to dance with him. Isel reaches out to her brother and agrees to dance. At that moment, Leo is called out by a knight. The Count asks Sir Barris what has happened. Barris tells the Lord that His Majesty wants to speak to him right now. Leo is confused as he has to keep an eye on his sister. Isel reassures Leo that she will be fine, so he can go. Her brother decides to ask Sir Barris to stay with Isel until he returns. The knight agrees to honor this request. Leo asks Sir Barris to come closer to him and then asks him to look around carefully and stay close to Isel and constantly make sure she is not in discomfort. Count Brish promises his sister that he will be back soon, so he asks her to wait for him here. Isel asks her brother again not to worry. Before finally leaving, Leo warns his sister about noisy ladies and asks her to be especially wary of Mistress Rose, as he considers her a very ugly woman in terms of character. Isel agrees, but she does not understand what she says about Mistress Rose. In her eyes, she sees a blazing fire, and most likely the reason for this opinion about her is that her brother cannot recognize her feelings of love for him. This is how Leo, like Izel, is hopeless and clueless in love and makes wrong reasoning. Leo worries about Izel and feuds with Mistress Rose. After Count Brish moved away from his sister, all the men's attention turned to her. Men of different ages, and whether they were engaged or not, ran up to Izel and each asked her to dance and argued among themselves about who had done it first. A young lady with fear in her eyes tries to understand what is going on here. Cerberus asks the gentleman to refrain from any proposals, as the case is very frightening. One of the young gentlemen asks Isel to give him a chance, while the other reproaches him for already having a bride. Watching Cerberus try desperately to protect her from the other men, Isel realizes that he's just a knight, so he's not used to doing all this. The young lady tells Cerberus that she has not attended such events for a long time, so now she has a bit of a headache and asks the knight to escort her to a place where she can rest from the noise and people. Isel asks the gentleman to understand her and not to take it personally. One of them agrees that if the lady really has a headache, it is better to go to rest and asks Izel to escort her. The Countess tells him that there is no need for it since Cerberus is conducting her, so she has to decline the offer. The refusal brought some of the men to tears, so much so that they wanted to dance and talk to young Mistress Brish. Isel asks the knight to escort her to the terrace, giving him her hand. Before leaving for the Emperor's banquet, Izel's father told his daughter that if other people at the banquet were bothering her with talk or disturbing thoughts, she could go to the terrace to rest at any time. Then she would have some privacy and would not be disturbed by annoying people. When she reaches the terrace, Izel remembers the conversation and that her father told her she would feel better here. The young mistress thanks Cerberus for seeing her off. The knight apologizes to the miss for not being much help and tells her that he will wait for her here so she can rest in peace. Closing the door to the balcony behind her, Isel leaned on her boot and noticed that it was cool enough, but she could breathe the fresh air in silence for a few minutes. At that moment, Caesar Lejeune comes out of the corner with the words that he and Isel have not seen each other for a long time, and asks her if she has been doing well since their last meeting, and why she does not tell him anything, if she is afraid. Caesar tells Isel that he has sent her many letters proposing marriage, but has never received a reply, so he wonders if she is accidentally ignoring him. Isel tries to reassure herself that she endured this horrible man as a child, and now she is an adult and must survive this situation. She believes she can do it. Just deal with it like she did in the past. Isel's gotten smarter. She's grown up now, so this demon won't be able to put her in a stupor, and she won't be able to fight back. The Countess repeatedly imagined what she would do when she met Caesar Lejeune, but it was as if she were restrained. She could move a little, but she could not utter a single word. Approaching the young lady, Caesar tells her that she can't refuse him, and doesn't she remember the special time they spent together, and asks her if she wanted to meet him too. It's as if Isel is facing a wolf, and she is a stumped hare unable to do anything. It's all due to the trauma of childhood. Caesar reaches out to Isel, calling her to him and calling her good girl. The Duke grabs Isel firmly by the face and the young mistress tries to break free. At that moment, Archduke Rahan el Canox enters the balcony. Caesar Lejeune asks the Archduke what business he has with him because he is a little busy right now. Seeing Rahan, Isel thinks she should ask him for help, but her mouth won't open for some reason. Caesar asks the Archduke why he has come here. Leaning over the Duke's face, Rahan tells him that he promised Lady Brish to come here and looks up at Isel to ask her for confirmation. Archduke Canox asks Caesar to move away from the girl as quickly as possible and drills him with his gaze. Enraged, the Duke leaves the veranda with a loud slamming of the door behind him. Rahan runs up to Isel and asks her worriedly if she is all right. The young mistress answers him that nothing serious has happened, and thinks at that moment that she does not want Rahan to know what has happened. Without getting up from the floor, Isel tells his superior Archduke Canox that she thought she had made so many mistakes in front of him that her legs were sharply weakened. Rahan gives Isel his hand and tells her that she has done nothing wrong. but the young mistress insists and tells the man that she did not know he was an archduke and had allowed him to be treated in such an uncultured manner. She apologizes for this. Archduke Canix asks Isel what her mistake is if he himself has been hiding his status. And since she has done nothing wrong, so he has nothing to forgive Isel for, and gallantly asks her to give him a dance. The other ladies invited to the banquet discuss among themselves the fact that Archduke Canix is dancing. They consider it a very unusual event that a man with such a terrible character can dance so calmly. One of the girls in the green dress tells everyone that Archduke Canix had previously appeared at the banquet. There was an incident at the opening of the banquet at the end of the year. Blood was splattered all over Rahan's body, and in his hand he was holding a sword, which was also covered in blood. The emperor sees the Archduke weaving into the banquet and asks him what he is doing. Rahan explains to him that he came to him with a question about money. There is a war on the state border. The soldiers are sleeping on the cold ground and can't even dream of warmth and delicious food, while they are all here eating, dancing, and having fun. So Rahan Canix, pointing his sword at the emperor, adds to his words that since they have enough budget to open a banquet, will he be able to provide his soldiers with a warm bed and tasty food? The emperor smilingly suggests discussing military expenditures separately with him and not in front of all the guests. He asks Canix to go to a secluded place and asks the head of finance to follow them. And at this moment, he thinks about what an obnoxious boy Rahan is. The girl ends her story by saying that this is why the Archduke does not tolerate banquets. Another lady draws the attention of her acquaintances to how those girls are again showing interest in him. Now the queen of the ball is the arrogant Mrs. Rosa and is charmed by Archduke Canix's looks just like that time. At one of the banquets, the 20-year-old Archduke Canix made his debut in high society. Madame Rosa was struck by his beauty. She confronted him on purpose, dropping a fan at his feet, and asks Rahan if he is all right. Mrs. Rosa is acting, saying she is dizzy so she can't pick it up and who would help her. Archduke Canix does not take his eyes off the fan. Then he unsubscribes it to a far distance, which brings terror to Lord Rose. This amusing incident became famous. Rose was then 18 years old and was rejected for the first time in a couple of seconds. The noble Lady Isel does not pay attention to the gazes directed at her and Archduke Canix, and she danced all the time without taking her eyes off her partner. Everyone wonders who this mysterious lady is. Isel tells His Excellency during the dance that she doesn't want to be impolite, but she would like to ask him a question. Rahan allows her to ask him anything she wants. The Countess asks him if he knew who she was when they first met. Rahan tells her that he didn't know she was the young Mistress Brish when they first met. Isel clarifies with him how he eventually found out. Archduke Canix tells the Countess that Sir Harris was commissioned to guard her, and that is how he found out. Isel tells the Archduke that Sir Harris mistook him for his knight that day. Immel thinks that Harris is a fool since he is intimately acquainted with Archduke Canix, but still made such a mistake. Rahan explains to the young mistress that he had shackled his status and was traveling in secret, and asked the girl not to worry as he would not tell Ceres anything. Isel thanks Rahan for this. The man adds that Ceres also has many circumstances so she can hide in the workshop. She is his friend, so although he helps her with everything, she does not accept much help. Isel reflects on the fact that she has helped several times, and the teacher has also helped her in one way or another. To be honest, the Archduke treats her with kindness and tenderness. But Alec and Harris do not know about this side and scold the Archduke of Canix, calling him a sick psychopath with whom one should not meet a glance and should keep a safe distance. The young mistress comes to the conclusion that rumors really cannot be believed, and she does not understand how about a decent and kind man can go such terrible and bad talk. Rahan asks Isel for permission to ask him something too, as something is bothering him. After permission, he asks who gave her the ring on her pinky finger. Isel apologizes to the Archduke as she cannot answer this question because it is private. Rahan asks if it is a secret, to which the Countess replies that it is not a secret, but that she cannot tell him. Rahan comes close to Isel's face and tells her that it can't be helped if the lady doesn't want to talk. But if she needs his help, he asks her to be sure to tell him, because he lives with the young lady in the same city, so he will help her. Isel does not understand why His Excellency is telling her this, and at that moment the waltz ended. Meanwhile, Count Brish runs after his son down the corridor and asks him to try to think positively and asks if there was a decree. Sir Leo answers his father that it does not matter what the decree was, but he does not want to be the deputy head of the knightly order, as he will have to directly obey that sick-on-the-head Archduke Canix. The knightly order consists of the chief, who is the emperor himself, the head of the order, Archduke Canix, from that time the deputy head, Leo Brish, and 3 adjutants, which includes Sir Millen and Sir Barris. Leo doesn't want to be deputy, as he thinks it's too much, and there's nothing to think about, as he will be the one to get under the hot hand of Archduke Canix. All the knights from the capital avoid this position by all means, and Leo is still indignant as to why he was chosen. At that moment, Sir Barris, a knight, runs up to Count Brish with the report that young Lady Brish has gone to the terrace, but young Master Legion has stubbornly followed her. Leo grabs the knight by the shoulders and asks which way the terrace is. Barris tells him that it is on the side of the Great Hall. Leo and Count Brish run at full speed into the banquet hall and shove people to get through, who called it ill-mannered. Brother and father hope their dear Isel is all right. The knight points in the direction of where the young mistress stands. Leo notices her sister and tries to figure out who is dancing with her and can't believe that the man across from her is Archduke Rahan el Canix. Leo orders Mayor Barris to give him the sword now. The knight tells him that no weapons are allowed at the banquet. Leo gets even angrier and tells the knight that if he doesn't have a weapon, he will kill him with his bare hands. Sir Barris tearfully tells the young lord that this is not the way. The father tries to calm his son by telling him that there is no need for that since the waltz is over. Leo heads towards his sister and the Archduke with rage in his eyes, wondering how this man dared to touch his sister. The Archduke introduces himself to Isel's relatives and bows to them with his hand on his chest. Everyone is amazed that a member of the imperial family is introduced first and even bows first, though it is customary for lower status people to bow first during introductions. Rahan apologizes for so unceremoniously taking precious time away from the young Mistress Isel. Leo is frightened that this crazy man would say such a thing. Isel asks her brother if he has settled the matter His Majesty sent him to take care of. Her brother replies that he has not because a problem has arisen. The young lady asks His Excellency Erzgerog Canix if her brother has been entrusted with some terrible matter because he is acting strangely. Rahan replies to Isolde that his brother was not instructed to do anything of the sort, but that he apparently did not like the fact that he danced with his sister, and notes that Count Brish and Sir Leo are very fond of Isolde. The young gentleman is outraged that a strange man has just mentioned his sister's name. Isel is embarrassed by the whole situation and explains to the Archduke Xerox, covering her blushing face with her hands, that her older brother always behaves like this, and asks him not to embarrass her. Rahan says that Sir Leo seems to love his little sister very much. The Archduke then recalls that Sir Leo Brish has been promoted to the position of deputy head of a special order of knights. Isel asks her brother admiringly if this is true. The young Mr. Brish doesn't understand how Rahan knew about it if the Emperor has just given him the position. Isel is delighted that Archduke Canix will be working with her brother Leo in a special knightly order. Rahan confirms this by saying that he has been honored with the title of Head of the Special Order of Chivalry. Isel had already pictured in her mind a beautiful picture with Rahan and Leo, a black-haired handsome man and a golden-haired handsome man in suits of red and blue shades with a double-headed crest at the neck. Rahan tells Leo that he has been given the head position and still lacks a lot of skills, so he is glad to have someone around to help him. Leo answers him with the same sinister smile that he knows his job well. Of course, if Leo agrees, they will clash. Sir Barris and Count Brish are watching their tense dialogue. The knight tells the Count that he is very scared, and Father Isel replies that he is very lucky that he is not old enough to work in a special order of knights. The banquet comes to an end, and Rahan says goodbye to Isel, that it was a pleasure to talk to her, and since he and her brother Leo will be working hand in hand, they will sometimes see the young lady, and in that case, he bids her farewell until they meet again and kisses Isel's hand. This really horrifies Count Brish, Leo, and Cerberus. The dialogue between Isel and Archduke Konax is watched from the sidelines by an angry Caesar Legion with a glass of red wine in his hand. The Duke calls out to the son and tells him that he understands him, but now he must end these outbursts of negativity. Caesar turns to his father and starts yelling that he can't hold back because the mad Archduke Konax has ruined his re-encounter with the young lady Isel, especially since he has only been back from the battlefield for a month since he was able to meet Isel. Next to him, she only did what she was shaking with fear. But as soon as the Archduke appeared, as Isel began to stick to him and make eyes, Duke Lezion asks Caesar to calm down as if the promised day will come, everything will go as planned. Caesar, finishing his wine, thinks that even a member of the royal family cannot unceremoniously meddle in his family's affairs, and the emperor cannot lightly touch Duke Lezion. And if the father says that this day will come, then he will grab this girl by her thin, pale neck, take her to his room, and ban her there bound in chains. The man starts laughing evilly and promises that he will never let Isel go. And that's what he decided from the first time they met, and she can soon realize it too. Late at night, Isel, her father, and brother head back to their estate in a white carriage. Count Brish asks his daughter to tell them how she is related to Archduke Konax. The young lady tells them that she was resting on the terrace, but the young gentleman Lezion suddenly abruptly walks onto the terrace behind her. Count Brish and Sir Leo ask her sister to elaborate on what happened there, and whether Archduke Konax really saved her from Caesar Lezion. Isel answers them that His Excellency the Archduke did help her in that situation. Count Brish wonders why Archduke Konax would help her for no reason if he doesn't know her. Rahan has helped her many times before, but she can't tell her family. Leo asks his sister if Rahan has threatened her, or how else to explain that in return for his son's salvation, he has asked Isel for a dance. The Countess starts shouting that Leo knows nothing, and that His Excellency Archduke Konax is a kind, sensitive, and wonderful man, and one should not say such strange and terrible things about him. Leo and Count Brish are surprised that Isel is arguing with them. Her brother starts yelling back at Isel that she is the one who knows nothing about him. This devil in the flesh is the worst man in the empire. Count Brish asks his daughter if she has eaten anything strange today and if Rahan has made her drink any medicine. Isel is convinced that Rahan is not such a terrible person, and she doesn't understand why her brother and father believe these rumors, and she would really like to resolve this misunderstanding between them. The Countess looks out the window, and realizing that they are almost there, promises to tell them everything in detail. Isel doesn't know how to explain about the henchman, and it's a shame. She remembers that Archduke Konax asked her who gave her the ring that is now on her little finger. Isel doesn't understand why anyone would ask who gave her the ring, and she can't tell anyone. Rahan asked about the ring so suddenly that she was very confused. This ring is the most precious thing she has, and she can't tell anyone about it. It is her treasure, her light, her El. The next day, another auction began in the capital's auction hall, the Karayem Orshian. The auctioneer announces the 9th lot, Queen Kristen's famous necklace from the royal palace of the donkey. The necklace is set with 20-carat blue sapphires under the name Mermaid's Footprints, and its starting price is 1,000 crowns. The bidders raise the amount by 1,000 crowns each time. On one of the balconies sit representatives from the temple of the goddess Anyx. The girl observes what is happening through binoculars and admiringly tells her partner, Mr. Yuri, that it is the first time in her life in such a place. The man asks Mrs. Raziel to stop acting like a hillbilly. Raziel replies to Yuri that she has spent her whole life in the temple, and this is the first time she has come to such a luxurious place, and of course she is a rustic. Her partner asks her not to draw too much attention to herself, and to sit quietly as today they have to fulfill a special task given to them by the head priest. On the 2nd floor, Yuri sees the guests of honor. They are dressed in tight clothes and their faces are hidden by masks. Most of them are aristocrats of high status, so they attend anonymously. Meanwhile, someone has called the final price for Queen Kristen's Mermaid Tears necklace, and it was bought for 5,000 crowns. The auctioneer announces the last slot for today. Raziel is happy to see it. Finally, he will be seen, and there is not much left. Today's last slot is a new work of genius sculptor L, a sculpture of a white hawk blessed by the goddess Enix. It is made of white Leo's wood. The starting price of this slot is 5,000 crowns. Upon hearing the first price, Mrs. Raziel argues that an ordinary family can live on 5,000 crowns for a year. Yuri replies that in any case it has nothing to do with them, as they were asked to win the auction and take the statue. Everyone in this building wants to get a magical statue, and the amount is getting higher and higher. Mrs. Raziel notices that this slot has made the place very noisy. She rises from her full seat and shouts out a price of 10,000 crowns. Yuri marvels at her determination to win. The auctioneer informs everyone that the bid has been sharply raised to 10,000 crowns and asks who will name the higher number. Someone in the distance raises the price to 20,000 crowns. Yuri, looking for the person who said this price, notices guest number 72, dressed all in black, including a mask that conceals his identity. Mrs. Raziel panics and asks her partner how much money they have with them. Yuri tells her that they only have 20,000 crowns with them, but the head priest has urged them to win the auction, and if they don't, something terrible awaits them. Raziel decides that this will not do and adds his money and at least once will win the auction, and will think about the rest later, and names the amount of 25,000 crowns. The auctioneer asks who will offer more. The mysterious man in black calls the sum of 40,000 crowns, thus checkmate, and the outcome was decided. A new work by the sculptor L. Whitehawk was sold for a record price of 40,000. At the end of the auction, Mrs. Raziel asks Yuri if the man who bought the sculpture is not the man from the rumors. The man realizes that on arrival, they will definitely not get away with it, and asks his partner what kind of rumor she is talking about. Raziel tells him that the man is buying up all of L's sculptures. Meanwhile, Saratyrian meets Rahan in the corridor and calls him crazy. Saratyrian tries to take the wooden box with the sculpture from Rahan, saying that he is crazy to buy it for 40,000 crowns. Ergertzog reminds his friend that he himself told him that he can buy sculptures directly by participating in the auction. Saratyrian replies to Rahan that he has gone too far, because for 40,000 crowns you can buy several country houses overlooking the best scenery, and he is buying up sculptures with this money. The Archduke asks Saratyrian to let go of his box, and with one hand he binds his hands. He asks Rahan to get away from him, but the Archduke tells him that he first said get away from him and asks him what he will do if he breaks such a precious sculpture. After Archduke Canix let go of Saratyrian's hands, he falls to the floor saying that he is a sick psychopath, and as he thought all this time has not changed at all, and in front of Isel, he brazenly pretends that he is already sick of it. Rahan gives his friend a haughty look and asks him what if he wants to do that. Saratyrian rebukes him for not being interested in art, and asks Rahan what he plans to do with all the sculptures of Isel he has bought at such an unimaginable price. Ergertzog threw a confused look at the box saying only the word fairy. At that moment, Saratyrian realized why he was buying the sculpture and acting so strangely towards Isel, because she was the fairy from Rahan's childhood. A few years ago at the Imperial Academy, two worried boys run up to Saratyrian in the hallway, and he asks them what's wrong, if there is a war. One of them replies to Saratyrian that it's a problem of almost the same magnitude, since they just saw the dormitory assignment and he'll be sharing a room with this guy, and asks Saratyrian if he's okay grabbing him by the shoulders. The young man guessed it was about Rahan el-Canix. The dark-haired boy asks Saratyrian if he has already done something about this psychopath Rahan, because when they first met him, he intimidated them a lot. Entering his dorm room for the first time, the first thing Saratyrian thought of when he saw Rahan was that he was famous, but not in a good way. Rahan el-Canix is the only son of Archduke Canix, nephew of the emperor. Therefore, he is a spoiled bully with a bad temper, unsociable, arrogant, and much more. Saratyrian came to the bed where Rahan el-Canix was reading a book, and holding out his hand told him that from this day on they would share a room with him, and introducing himself as Saratyrian. Tarja asked him politely to take care of him. Rahan calls his neighbor a sheep and asks him to disappear and not talk to him. The Ceraterian agrees not to disturb him. The boys running up to the Ceraterian are surprised that he actually dared to speak to Rahan Elkanax. The boy replies that he should have said hello to his neighbor anyway. One of the boys reminds Ceraterian that Rahan won't mess with him. Another suggests that maybe he used to be friends with bullies, and because of that he's capable of taking down 5 men by himself. Rahan Elkanax broke one man's arm, broke another man's leg, robbed a third of his front teeth, and knocked 2 others unconscious. Ceraterian answers them that if those boys had not teased him and not started a fight with him, everything would have been fine and no one would have been hurt. But he is not going to look at his neighbor anyway. The boys are surprised at how much of a saint Ceraterian is. In truth, he had met Rahan not when he had entered the academy, but when Rahan had taken his picture album from the bullies and returned it to him. Sitting in his dorm room, Ceraterian assumed that Rahan probably didn't remember their first meeting. Ceraterian turns to his neighbor Rahan and asks him if he really doesn't remember their first meeting. Rahan Elkanax asks his neighbor not to talk, and since he is hungry, he asks Ceraterian to go to the dining room and bring him bread and cheese. The young man resents the fact that Rahan wants him to steal food from the canteen again. With an angry look at Ceraterian, Rahan asks him if he wants him to go there himself. The young man realizes that if Rahan Elkanax goes there, he will completely destroy the dining hall. Rahan lounges on the bed and again asks his neighbor to do what he said as long as he asks it nicely. Looking at Rahan, Ceraterian thinks that he is as beautiful as a porcelain doll. He and Rahan shared a room, and during the whole time they lived together, there had never been a single fight, and the other children called Mr. Ceraterian a saint. When he was walking down the corridor with food, the other boys would run up to him and ask him where Mr. Ceraterian was going. The young man told them that Rahan was hungry, so he instructed him to go get bread. The boys hugged him and said that he was a saint and asked him how he managed to live peacefully with Elkanax. They all made fun of Ceraterian, but he understood. Did he look after him in spite of all the bad talk about him? Ceraterian brings bread from the canteen and unwraps it and tells Rahan Elkanax that this is all that is left in the canteen and there is no more bread. Rahan asks his neighbor if he really thinks he will eat it. Although Rahan was not the most polite to him, he never once snapped at him. However, after completing one case, Rahan is changed. One day, young Rahan sits on the windowsill and tells the Ceraterian that he has met a fairy. While writing something down in his notebook, he asks his friend why it was a fairy and whether it was actually a monster or a beast. Rahan gets angry and orders Ceraterian to shut his mouth. Then, the boy thought that Rahan had fallen in love for the first time. That day, he stopped attending classes and ran away from the dormitory and returned a few weeks later. On the day of Rahan's return, who had climbed into the room through the window, Ceraterian asked him where he had gone again. Rahan Elkanax replies with a sad look that the fairy is missing and he must find her. Ceraterian doesn't understand what kind of nonsense Rahan is talking about since he disappeared without saying a word, and suddenly stopped coming to the academy and dormitory and tells his friend that maybe he should come to his house and tell him everything. Before, he would have yelled at Ceraterian, but that day he just sat down on the bed and told his friend that he had to find the fairy, even at the cost of his life. It was then. Rahan Elkanax's red-orange eyes began to turn yellow, and as soon as he graduated from the academy, he went to war where he brutally killed his enemies and was rewarded for his great contribution to winning the war. Rahan Elkanax became a war hero. Whether it's the monster or the fairy he was talking about, he won't be able to find her. But as Ceraterian realized from his friend Isel's words, this is the fairy he was looking for. Cerateriana gets up from the floor and asks Rahan if he is sure since it was so long ago, and maybe he was just mistaken. The Archduke asks his friend if he is like the man who made the mistake. Ceraterian comes closer to him and answers that he is very much like him. Rahana wonders if Ceres has lost his eyesight or if he is just joking. And then Ceraterian realized that if the fairy exists, then no one but Isel can be it. But if it is really true and is, what Rahan is going to do to her, and what sin Isel committed in her past life, that in this one she got involved with this devil in the flesh. He asks Rahan if Izel remembers him too, but after a long silence he realizes that the young Lady Brish does not remember him, and this amuses him. Archduke Canix replies to his friend that it doesn't matter if she doesn't remember him, he won't leave her again. At night, Izel has a dream. In total darkness, she falls into an abyss and is very scared. She doesn't realize where she is. The girl asks for someone to rescue her and help her get out, as she can't breathe properly. Lying on the ground, she starts crying from hopelessness. Looking at her hands, Izel notices that her precious rings are missing, but she doesn't remember taking them off and goes in search of them, as she must find them at any cost, as they are her most precious treasure. Izel hears a strange sound behind her and turns around and sees a bright yellow light in front of her. She can't see anything as the light is so bright. Then she finds herself on a lawn covered with green grass. Izel tries to figure out where she is. She looks around and thinks she's in a forest, but doesn't understand how she got here if she's been somewhere else recently. Turning in the other direction, she sees a dark-haired young man standing behind a tall tree. He notices the girl and, calling her Ale, tells her that he has been waiting for her. Izel realizes that this is her dear Ale. The young mistress wakes up abruptly and immediately looks at her fingers. Luckily, all the rings are in place, and it was all just a dream, and she dreamed about this young man again. Izel hasn't thought of him in a long time. She replayed in her mind the first day they met. The young man is surprised that her name is El. Izel confirms this and asks him his name. El is not Izel's full name as a child. The boy introduces himself by the same name. He is very surprised that she is called by the same childhood name. Young Izel rejoices with delight in her eyes at such a coincidence with the same names. The boy considers it a marvelous occasion. Ella sometimes braided Izel's hair, and it was quite interesting while he carved the figures. A young man asks her what she is doing. Izel tells him that she makes figurines because it is her hobby. She likes to make sculptures. As Elle continues to braid the girl's hair, she asks her if it's hard. Elle confirms that it is hard, but she likes to do it, even though her family doesn't like it. A boy asks her why her family doesn't like her hobby. Izel explains to him that she has a very weak body and small hands, and she can easily cut herself with an engraving knife, so her father and brother are terribly unhappy with her hobby. The young man replies that he would also be very worried if she were to hurt herself, but he realizes that neither he nor her family can stop her from doing what she loves so much. He removes the rings from his little fingers and gives them to Izel, telling her that from now on he will protect her from injury. Izel asks the young man if he is really giving her the rings, and asks him if they are valuable to him and why he is giving them to her. Ella smilingly tells the girl that he doesn't need them now. Izel asked why, but the young man never answered, only smiled silently. When he smiled at her, his eyes were the exact color of the sky above them. Izel had told him directly how beautiful his eyes were. Perhaps if Izel had been painting instead of sculpting, she would have tried hardest to draw his unusual sunset-colored eyes when painting his portrait. And when she dreams of her childhood, she also dreams of the beautiful Elle. Izel doesn't remember much about her childhood, and she couldn't say goodbye to Elle properly and returned abruptly to the capital. The Countess knows nothing about him except his name at the time, and she didn't think of asking about any other things. And going to the window, Izel thinks that if she comes to the forest again, she will be able to meet him again. But even if she does meet him, will they be able to recognize each other after all it's been 10 years since the last time they met? The maid Belle enters the room at that moment, asking if the young mistress is awake, and seeing that she is awake, offers to fetch her some water. Izel agrees if it is not too much trouble. And while Belle went to fetch water, the young mistress had time to change into street clothes. The maid sees this and asks Izel what her outfit is and if she is going to sneak out of the house again. The young mistress asks Belle to be a little quieter. She asks the maid if her father and brother have gone to the palace in the morning. Belle confirms this and tells Izel that if she leaves again, she will be scolded. The Countess takes the basket of goods in her hands and tells the maid that she really has something important to do today and promises her that she will be back soon. That day, she was supposed to give the statues to the teacher to sell, but she couldn't do it and just went home, So today, she has to come to Ciri's workshop again. Izel leaves and asks Belle, the maid, to tell Sir Alec and Cheris that she is sculpting in her room in case they are looking for her. Belle tries to tell her something, but the young mistress keeps heading out anyway. When Izel opens the door, she bumps into her brother Sir Leo, who asks her where she is going. Terrified, the girl falls to her knees and tearfully apologizes to him and explains to him that she wasn't going to sneak out at all, but that she just needed a clone to do something, so she went outside. The young mistress promises her brother that this will not happen again and that she should not have done such a thing. Leo doesn't understand what he said that made Izel cry so hard. She is more precious to him than anyone else, and he believes that he should protect her so that nothing bad happens to her, and he doesn't want his sister to feel guilty. The young Count Brish is trying to understand who has affected his dear Izel so much that she is so easily upset. Leo, with a warm smile on his face, promises Izel that he won't say anything or ask anything, so he asks permission to go with her. Izel and her brother headed for the workshop, passing by the market where everyone was trying to sell their goods, from offering a sword to the Knight Count Brish to the fresh fruits and vegetables brought in this morning. Leo is surprised that his sister can run so habitually through this bustling street and concludes that this is not the first time she has been here. Leo grabs his sister's hand and tells her that there are a lot of people here and he is worried that they will lose each other, so he offers to hold hands with her. Izel tells her brother not to worry as she is often here and promises to protect him. Leo doesn't believe what she said, but is pleased that their dear Izel has really grown up. At the entrance to the workshop, Izel tells her brother that she has been studying sculpture here for 3 years. The young master had no idea that his sister had been sneaking out of the house for such a long time. Izel warns her brother that no one must know that she is her teacher. Leo strokes his sister on the head and promises to keep the secret. They enter the workshop, and the young mistress greets her teacher and provides her with her older brother. Izel apologizes for them coming so suddenly, but she really wanted to meet her, so she had to come with her brother. Saratherian is shocked to learn that Leo Brish is Isel's older brother. There is not a single person among the capital's aristocrats who does not know Sir Leo Brish. This young man with blonde hair and eyes the color of dark emerald, with impeccable appearance and straightforward character with the art of swordsmanship, gifted by God himself, a man about whom they say, the best among the knights, the best among the nobles. It's all Leo Brish, the fearsome brother of Isel Brish. Leo and Izel are like brother and sister, and so Saratherian thinks he is a complete fool for not noticing their resemblance. Izel runs up to him and asks him if he's in pain. Saratherian replies to the young mistress that everyone is good to him, and, having recovered a little, tells Leo Brish that he is pleased to meet them and, extending his hand, introduces himself as Ceres. He and Leo Brish had met several times before in the palace and had shared conversation as Saratherian Taria. Sir Taria introduced his only son, Zeperterian, to the young Earl of Brish one afternoon. Leo extended his hand to him, saying that it was a pleasure to meet the young Mr. Taria. Back in real time, Sir Brish bows to the Isel teacher and tells him it is a pleasure to meet him. At that moment, Saratherian realizes that he almost got burned for actually being a man by extending his hand in greeting. Leo asks Ceres if they have met somewhere before because her face looks familiar to him. Saratherian replies with fear in his eyes that it has never happened in his memory and tells them that he'd better go make tea and think about how to get out of this situation. Izel offers to help the teacher. Saratherian hears the bell on the door and, thinking that it is his salvation, he wants to say welcome to him. But not to finish, he sees Rahan el-Kanax in the doorway. The sculptor realizes that he was trying to escape from the fox, but again fell into the clutches of the tiger. When he sees Isel, Rahan comes up to her and kisses her hand in greeting, saying that he did not expect to meet her here again by chance. Leo Brish watches the Archduke's acting with a disgruntled face. It's a familiar situation for the Saratherian. Every time Izel comes to the workshop, Rahan appears here, saying that their meeting was an absolute coincidence. Ever since he was a child, Rahan has ruled Saratherian like a pawn on a chessboard. He even turned his sacred workshop into his pawn. Rahan el-Kanax asks Izel how she is feeling after the dance. The young mistress answers him that she is fine. Cerethrian can't see how his apprentice can't see that foxtail of his. He calls out to Isel, but the Archduke tells him to shut up and stay out of the conversation. Cerethrian decides he would rather make tea than be around them. Isel doesn't know what to do in the presence of all these people, since today she must be sure to ask her teacher to sell the figurines. Isel greets His Excellency Archduke Canax. With his arms crossed over his chest, Rahan el Canax grinned and told Sir Leo that he didn't recognize him at first. The young Earl of Brish replies that he didn't recognize him either, since he was dressed in the clothes of commoners. Angry, Rahan asks the Count what he has just said. Leo is still outraged that Archduke Rahan el Canax dared to kiss his sister's hand so brazenly at the banquet. This and the kiss at the ball has caused a premonition of war between the two of them, and in this case Isel does not know what to do, as she cannot let them fight again and tells Leo's older brother that he has just told her he is very hungry. Count Brish denies that he told her such a thing and looks at his sister with utter bewilderment. Realizing that Leo cannot take a hint, Isel tells His Excellency the Archduke of Canax that her brother told her that he was hungry, so they had to leave the workshop and went to find somewhere to eat. Sir Leo reiterates that he is not hungry at all, and that he certainly did not say that. The young mistress pushes her brother out. Cerethrian comes out with a tray of tea and tells them that everything is ready. Isel apologizes to the teacher for making them leave so quickly and promises to come back again, but a little later. Cerethrian is completely bewildered and agrees to have Isel come back later. Sir Leo Brish asks his sister what happened, because he did not tell her that he was hungry, and when did he suddenly get hungry? Isel wants to explain everything to her brother, but she can't do it because Archduke Canax enters their dialogue with a question addressed to the young lady about whether she missed the dinner and tells her that it's not good for her and she should take care of her health. Isel and Leo are a little shocked by Rahan's appearance. The Count cannot understand when the Archduke came to them. Isel explains to Archduke Canax that she wanted to take her brother to the restaurant, so now they must sadly say goodbye to him. Sir Leo is very angry with Rahan, and his sister tries to calm him down by holding his hand. The Archduke apologizes for the indiscretion and asks them if they would mind if he went to the restaurant with them because he wanted to eat too. With his creepy look, Rahan makes Leo agree without any words because he will soon become his direct superior. Sir Leo Brish, with sweat dripping down his face, stammering in fright, replies to Archduke Canax that he is perfectly fine with them going to the restaurant together. Isel, looking at her brother, was yesterday that he would deny Rahan this request. The Archduke calls the young lady by her name, which displeases Leo, as he does not understand why Rahan always calls his sister by her name. Rahan walks over to Isel and with all tenderness and care puts the red hood of her cloak over her head. The girl is greatly embarrassed, and it makes her face redden. She thanks His Excellency Archduke Canax for the care he has shown her. The man replies to Isel that it would be better if she just called him Rahan. Isel agrees to this. Leo can't understand what's even going on here and why they're acting like this, and whether they have fallen in love with each other, but he just cannot believe it, which leads him to uncontrollable rage that such a terrible man flirts with her dear sister. Arriving at the restaurant, Archduke Canax, continuing to take care of Isel, pulls back a chair for her to sit down. The young lady graciously thanks Rahan. The man sits Isel down and tells her that it is his first time in this place. She tells Rahman that the food here is very good. Isel wants to say something to the Archduke, calling him Excellency, but he corrects her to Rahan. The young lady forces herself against Rahan, telling him that he is such a noble and distinguished aristocrat, but behaves so easily and casually. Archduke Canax corrects himself by saying that this is not true at all, and that he simply does not pay attention to one's status or position in society. Rahan thus praises himself for what he does not really do, and only pretends to be a good man to Isel. Sir Leo is still angry about the whole situation, and is blushing angrily thinking about how unlucky he is. Rahan el Canax suggests ordering the chef's recommended dish of lamb steak, and asks Isel if she would like it. The young mistress agrees to the choice. Count Brish is pissed off at how Archduke Canax pretends to be pretty when he never really was, and it's all good acting for Isel. Rahan gives the menu to the waiter and politely asks him to bring a mutton steak for 3 people and asks him to cook the meat separately for the lady so that it is soft and serve the dish on a separate plate. On the battlefield, Rahan never used his status as an archduke to distinguish himself from the rest of the soldiers. He didn't get special treatment. He ate the same food with the rest of the soldiers, slept in the same place, and many other things that ordinary co-workers do. And although Rahan el-Khanix has a nasty temper, he is definitely not the psychopath that many people think he is. Archduke Khanix asks Aysel with a smile what her favorite food is. The young mistress answers him that she likes everything. Leo grits his teeth in anger and mentally asks Rahan el-Khanix not to pretend to have manners. At that moment, lamb steaks, salad, and sliced bread are brought to the table. Aysel is already preparing a fork and knife to cut the steak because of how good the food smells. But suddenly, Archduke Khanix moves the board with the meat away from her, leaving the young mistress bewildered. Rahan laughingly explains to Aysel that he did not intend to take away her food and asks her not to be upset as he just wants to cut the steak for her. When Rahman has finished cutting, he slides the meat plank back to the girl and asks her to taste the meat. Aysel wishes Rahman el-Khanix a pleasant appetite. Sir Leo Brish cannot understand what this strange atmosphere is and how the Archduke knows Aysel, for he thinks they have never seen each other. But remembering that his sister has run away to the workshop many times, the young count suggests that perhaps they first met there. He hates to admit it, but the Archduke's relationship with Aysel seems sincere to him. Archduke Rahano el-Khanix is genuinely very interested in Aysel, and he deliberately does not hide his feelings for the young lady. Sir Leo thinks that he may have easily fooled Aysel with his kindness and sincerity, who knows nothing about the situation in the country. But he cannot deceive him, and as soon as they return home, he will reveal the whole truth about Archduke Khanix to Meter. Rahan asks Sir Leo why he is not eating his food, and with a horrified look offers to cut the meat and holds out his bloody knife to him. Leo plays along with His Excellency and replies that he can do it himself, and he thinks about what he heard. Maybe you need to cut the neck. Sure, because with this knife, Rahan can slit the necks of dozens of people. Resting his head on his folded hands, Archduke Khanix informs them that the opening of a special knighthood will take place in a few days. Aysel asks him about whether he will happen to be passing through the palace. Rahan confirms her speculation and adds that there will be a competitive hunt immediately afterward, so the opening will be modest. The young Count Brish explains to his sister that the competitive hunt is a celebration of the end of summer and the coming of fall, and the 2 events will take place at the same time. The end of summer and the coming of fall is the time when the debt to Duke Lysian must be repaid, and if it is not done in time, Aysel will have to marry Caesar Lysian. But she doesn't want to do that, and would rather die than let it happen. Rahan asks the young mistress if she has ever been to the herbal forest before. The grass forest is the place where one first meets Ale, a glade that only she and the Ale knew about, where they spent time under the shade of a huge tree. Pensively, Aysel answers the Archduke that she had been there as a child. Archduke Khanix explains to Aysel that there will be an opening of the competitive hunt, and that he wants the Countess to come there because he wants to see her there. The young Count Brish does not understand what this madman is talking about, and stands up from his seat and calls the Archduke crazy, and that their dear Aysel will not go there. The Countess interrupts her brother and answers His Excellency that she will come to the event. That night, the priests Mrs. Raziel and her partner Yuri arrive at the Wincott house in black cloaks. The priest opens the door to them, saying that he has been expecting them. Mrs. Raziel tells the man that they have come to his house to investigate the truth of the rumors about the statue. Yayuri adds that they cannot let the other priests of the temple of the goddess Enix to know of their coming to this house. Wincott reassures them that all the workers have left and no one will see them again. Wincott asks the priests to follow him and tells them that after buying that statue, the Viscountess was accidentally cured and that every company that touched the statues was successful. Surprisingly, everything went smoothly for them. Thanks to that statue, the Viscountess was sent healing and good luck, but in reality, the sculpture could not change anything. Mrs. Raziel and Yuri come to the Wincott house to investigate because they could not get the statue at the auction. Wincont opens the door of the room where his family's artworks are kept, including the very same statue of the mysterious sculptor L. It's the one that was bought a few months ago at the auction. When the priests come closer to the sculpture, they cover their mouths with their hands in amazement, unable to believe what they see before them. It emanates the same unimaginable divine power that no other relic in the temple of the goddess Enix contains. Surely only the head priest and her holiness can match it. Mrs. Raziel asks the Vicomte if this is the work of the sculptor L. The elderly man replies to the priest that it is, and that it is so famous that it was not easy to buy at auction. As they leave, the priests thank the Vicomte for showing them the statue so they can return to the temple of the goddess Enix with peace of mind. The man bids them farewell and closes the door to his house. Mrs. Raziel runs after Mr. Yuri to tell the subject that if the truth is revealed, there will be a huge commotion in the temple, and not only in the temple, but in the entire empire and even the mainland. Yuri explains to his partner that their duty is to report to Her Holiness, and then everything will depend on God. The priests saddle their horses and set off for the temple. The day of the competitive hunt is coming. All the guests are gathered at the Emperor's summer country house. Belle, looking out the window, tells the young mistress that the unimaginably luxurious carriages keep arriving. They are indeed seated ladies in fine attire, and their young mistress cannot lose to them. Iselle tells the maid Belle that tonight is not a ball, but a competitive hunt, and that she should be grateful to her father and brother for allowing her to come here. Isolde had responded impulsively to Rahan el-Kanax's offer, but when she heard about the grassy forest, she wanted to come here, although it would have been strange if that boy had been waiting for her under the tree. When the summer was over, Iselle wouldn't be able to come here anymore, so she had to take this chance. Iselle is dressed in a purple bouffant dress and wears a hat with flowers on top of her head. Belle sees the young mistress in her full form and tells her how beautiful she is. Iselle thanks the maid for picking out such a beautiful outfit for her. Belle asks Iselle if she needs a handkerchief, not in case she gets hurt, but because it is a tradition to give her lover a handkerchief before the competition. But Belle assumes that her mistress does not have a lover, and therefore thinks that she does not need a handkerchief. Iselle interrupts the maid to say that she will indeed need a handkerchief. Iselle comes out to the rest of the people. At that moment, the young lady Brish is noticed by Mrs. Rosa. The girl tells Iselle that she didn't know she would be here as she has never met her at a competitive hunt. Her henchwomen are surprised that Mrs. Brish has appeared at the banquet and at the hunt for the first time in a long time. Iselle turns in their direction, but doesn't realize who all these ladies are. One of the girls in a tight purple dress notices that Mistress Rose's dress and hairstyle look familiar, as they were the same ones worn by the young Mistress Brish at the ball. The girl in the green dress agrees with her. Mrs. Rosa is angry at this and asks the girl what they are talking about, as it is absurd, and they dare to say that she is repeating young Mrs. Brish. The girls deny their words because everyone in the social circle knows that Lady Rosa can set and think at the same time, that their outfits and hairstyles are very similar. Mrs. Rosa asks Iselle who she will support and explains to her that the winner will receive a necklace with blue pearls, and asks the Countess if she knew about it. Iselle replies that of course she did not know, as it is the first time she has attended such an event. Mrs. Rosa tries to reassure herself that she didn't mean to mock her and make her look like a stupid hillbilly, but she notices that Iselle looks as if she is fine, and that the words did not hurt her. The young mistress asks Rose if she will support anyone. Rose wants to answer her, but she can't help hating Iselle's face. She wants Sir Lair Brish to look only at her, but for him there is no one else in the world but his vile and disgusting sister. As she leaves, Lady Rose tells Iselle that it's none of her business. The Countess tries to warn the lady away. Mrs. Rosa was so absorbed in her resentment that she did not look under her feet and did not hear the warning of danger that caused Rosa to roll down the steps in her puffy white dress. Iselle runs up to her slowly and asks her if she's all right and if she's hurt. Looking at Iselle, Mistress Rose immediately recalls the day Sir Leo ran up to her to help her up the red-carpeted stairs. He held out his hand to her, but his green eyes looked at her indifferently, while Sir Leo looked at his little sister with warmth and a sincere smile. Young Mistress Isel continues to insist on helping Rosa up, but she doesn't answer her, only continues to stare at the painfully familiar face as Isel and her brother have the same emerald-colored eyes and lips. And after a short silence, she pushes away Mrs. Brish's helping hand and tells her that she will get up on her own without any help. Isel hands her the lace heat umbrella she dropped during the fall. Mistress then tries to leave the place as quickly as possible, thinking that she has disgraced herself. All the participants in the competitive hunt have already prepared for the hunt and mounted their horses. Isel approaches her brother and father and asks them to be careful. Sir Leo Brish advises the young lady to stay close to the knights, Sir Harris and Alec, as Duke Lezion and his son Caesar have arrived. The knights ask the young lord not to worry as they will be able to protect the young lady. Of course, Alec and Harris are good people, but for some reason Leo has a bad feeling that something will happen. Rahan El-Kanix rides up to Isel on his black horse and tells the young lady that he has been looking for her. The knights, father and brother, are completely bewildered that Rahan has been looking for their dear Isel for some unknown reason. Isel hands Rahan a sculpture rolled up in a handkerchief and explains to the man that she wanted to give it to him last time. She made it in the form of the staff of the goddess Enix and explains that she doesn't have enough skill, so she can't give him anything more than that. Rahan blurts out that this is not true at all and tells Isel that he will keep the statue and flattens her breasts, showing with these gestures how much he holds it dear. Count Brish Sr. and Jr. are shocked at what they have just seen before them. Isel remembers something and tells Rahan El-Kanix that she wants to give him a handkerchief and asks His Excellency to be sure to return safely. The man corrects her again to call him by his first name. Isel's family is even more surprised that Isel gave him the handkerchief that is usually given to lovers. Finally, the bugle sounded and the competitive hunt began. The girls sit at the table under the tent and discuss the fact that so far there has been no news of the men's return. One of the ladies tells the others that she knows what animals they will kill in the forest. Mrs. Rosa is drinking tea and doesn't understand why young Mrs. Brish is staring at her so intently, and whether she wants to start a quarrel with her by accident. Outwardly, she seems kind and silly, but in fact, she has a cheeky temper. But so far, this has not been known in the social circle. Isel looks at Mistress Rose and thinks that she has sharp facial features and is as beautiful as a statue and wants to make a figurine in her likeness, as she thinks it would make a very beautiful statue. Rose is still angry with Mrs. Brish, as she can't see the motive behind the stare. The girls turn around at the same time as they hear someone returning. The first person to return from the hunt is the young gentleman Caesar Lezion with a wagon with a wolf in it. The girls are horrified by what they see. The other men say that they have never seen such a huge wolf and believe that today's winner is undoubtedly Mr. Lezion. But to Caesar's great regret, a huge cart with a pile of slaughtered animals of various kinds is brought into the territory. People are discussing whose wagon it is and think that its owner will definitely be the winner today. They are trying to count how many animals there are, and someone suggested that there must be 50 of them. Caesar is angry that his victory has been taken away like this. Isel looks at the animal cart and sees the fawns lying on top of the pile. These little ones had been happily running around the clearing with their friends just a few hours ago, but a cruel man had killed them for fun. Archduke Kanix returns from the hunt after the wagon. People come up to him and say that they knew it was his wagon, as the others did not manage to catch any animals. Rahan looks toward Isel. She looks at the slaughtered animals with her hand over her mouth. Archduke Kanix asks the young mistress what is wrong, as she has a visibly unhealthy complexion. He specifies what she is in pain, as he is very worried. The man in charge of the arrival report approaches Archduke Kanix and asks him if the cart that just arrived is really his, since it is a record they would like to record. Isel is horrified that none other than His Excellency Archduke Kanix killed all these innocent animals. Rahan turns to Robert the Viscount and tells him that it is a delusion, and he is ashamed to admit it, but he did not kill any of the animals. The Vicomte is puzzled as to why Rahan is acting like a jackass again. The Archduke explains that he just doesn't want to take the sin of killing even in a competitive hunt. Rahan offers Isel to walk her to the nurse's station, as she has an obviously unhealthy complexion. The young mistress replies that there is no need to do so, as she is a little dizzy, so she just needs to sit down. The Archduke suggests going to a place where they can sit together. Viscount Robert is puzzled that Rahan Elkanix does not want to take the sin of killing an animal, since on the battlefield he chopped the necks of his opponents as if he were cutting grass, and he doesn't understand why young Mistress Brish is talking to him. While heading elsewhere, Isel crashes her foot into Caesar Letion's cart. Rahan worriedly asks the girl to be careful. At that moment, a wolf that was supposedly killed in the hunt jumps out of the cart. The wolf is about to pounce on the young lady, but it fails to do so as Archduke Canix kills the animal with one swing of his sword. Everyone is horrified that a wolf has come out and attacked young Mistress Brish. The knights ask for a doctor. A bloodied Rahan Elkanix asks Isel if she is all right and wipes the blood from her cheek and then lifts her up in his arms. Isel was not expecting this. Rahan tells her he will take her to the infirmary. The knights Sir Harris and Alec go to His Excellency Archduke Canix and tell him that it is better that they go with the young lady. Rahan tells them not to, as they have no power to take care of her properly. And before leaving, he tells Viscount Robert that all questions about the hunt should be put to him. Carrying Isel in his arms, Rahan says loudly that the biggest mistake a hunter can make is to take a human life. To make it easier to catch game, he must know how to hide, and now he will go and take good care of young Mistress Brish, so he asks the Viscountess to tidy up the place. Caesar Letion gritted his teeth with anger. Mentally calls Archduke Canix cheeky bastard because he so brazenly dares him to talk about him, and it is a disgrace Caesar will not tolerate. As a result of the meeting, the winner of the competitive hunt was Sir Leo Brish. Everyone congratulates Leo on his victory, but he himself does not understand how it happened. The Emperor tells the young Earl of Brish that he has won and caught so many animals. It seems that in his opinion he really has great skill. Leo looks at the cart Leo is talking about and realizes that it is definitely not his prey, and there has been a misunderstanding. The Emperor simply tells Archduke Canix to hand over the reward of a necklace with blue pearls. Rahan hands the reward to his uncle. Leo reflects that if you think about it, this wagon belongs to Archduke Canix. During the hunt, 3 men, including Sir Leo, approached the pile of animals killed by Archduke Canix. They were surprised at the huge number of animals he had caught. Rahan, sitting on a rock, told them he no longer wanted to hunt. One of the participants in the hunt whispers in Sir Leo Brish's ear that Archduke Rahan is simply bored with archery and only needs to bring a sword since Rahan actually kills animals like insects. Leo tells His Excellency before he receives his undeserved reward that it was he who killed all those animals. At that moment, Rahan Elkanix looked at Leo Brish with a look that implied that he should shut his mouth. Leo never understood why he was the winner of the fall competition hunt. After the young Mr. Brish was congratulated and presented with the necklace, one of the girls asks him who he will give the necklace with blue pearls to. Leo tells her that he will definitely give it to his little sister. This decision makes Mistress Rose angry. The Count opens the box and asks his sister if she will accept it. Isel's heart doesn't want to. She can't believe that her brother Leo killed all those poor animals. The girl tearfully says that she understands the hunt, but she feels sorry for so many animals. Leo, in tears, tells Isel that he didn't kill them. At supper, a sumptuous table full of today's catch has been laid out. Sir Harris asks Sir Leo if he has changed his clothes since dinner has already begun. Leo asks the knight where his sister Isel is. Sir Harriman tells him she is dining with the other ladies, and Alec is guarding her. The young Count Brish thinks that he has made a mistake in front of his sister, as he knows that Isel is very fond of animals and that he has won the hunt for them, and splices in how much she is disappointed in him. He is sorry that because of his position, he can't say that he didn't catch them. Sir Harris replies to the young Earl of Brish that this will not happen, and points to where Isel is sitting. Leo is surprised that his sister is eating meat, even though she was crying just now. Harris replies to the Lord that Isel is always like this. Leo smiles at the fact that Sir Harris seems to know Isel better than he does. The knight explains that all her faults depend on how one looks at her. Izel, sitting next to Mistress Rose, asks her why she isn't eating and offers her a taste of venison steak. Rose replies to young Mrs. Brish that she doesn't care, so she can eat as much as she wants. Izel wants to say something to her, but Mrs. Rosa interrupts her by shouting out the phrase that she will not eat. At that moment, her brother comes up to Izel and asks her if she liked the food. Lady Rosa wants to ask something, but Leo ignores her and asks her how much she ate. The young mistress tells her brother that she could not eat among strangers, so Lady Rosa kept her company, and because Lady Rosa took care of her, she could not eat anything herself. Mrs. Rosa is embarrassed and tells Leo that it wasn't like that, but he lets it go and thanks the lady for taking care of his sister. Leo tells her that their Isel can't eat among strangers, so he needs to be there for her as an older brother, and notes that she has been a great help. Izel offers her brother Leo to eat venison steak too, as it is very tasty, and since she is full, she warns her brother that she will go for a walk with Sir Alec. Knight Harris asks to go with him, but Izel tells him that they will go alone as he needs to eat too. Mistress Rose begins to feel guilty for speaking so rudely to young Mistress Brish. She mentally explains to her that she was angry with her because she wanted to get her brother's attention. Sir Leo Brish addresses Mistress Rose, mentioning that he was told that she has not yet eaten, and therefore suggests that they order new portions and enjoy their meal together. Leo asks the waiter to bring more food as this one is getting cold. Rosa apologizes to Izel again. Young Mrs. Brish is walking with Sir Alec through the woods. As evening falls and it gets colder, Izel starts to shiver. The knight suggests that Izel go and get a cloak if she is cold. The girl replies to Alec that there is no need since they have just left. Just as suddenly, Sir Alec loudly asks who is here. Izel asks the knight what has happened. The man replies to the young lady that he feels as if there is someone in the woods and asks the young lady to be careful as it could be an assassin. Izel notices that Sir Alec is acting strange again. Izel wonders how there could be an assassin in such a place if the Emperor is here and it was probably a little bunny. Alec asks Izel to keep vigilant while he goes and checks the situation. Realizing that she can't talk him out of it, Izel lets Alex go and asks him to return as soon as possible. The young mistress decides to wait for the knight on a wooden bench. Seated on it, Izel reflects on the fact that she first came to the grassy forest at night. She always came here after dinner on the pretext of a walk to meet the ale. Izel sees a halo of moonlight in the sky, which means it's going to rain soon. When she hears someone's footsteps, Izel is surprised that Alec has returned so quickly, but this person is not her knight, but Caesar Lysian, who asks to speak to Izel. He asks the young lady why she can't tell him if it's because she's talking to Archduke Xerox. And noticing that Izel is trembling, he asks if he is so scary, and grabbing the girl by the face, he asks her how long she and Rahan have known each other. Izel, with tears in her eyes, tells Caesar Layton that it is none of his business. The young duke doesn't understand why she says such hurtful words, and he thinks that of course it is his business, since he will soon be her husband. Izel replies to Caesar that this is not the case and she will pay back the debt one day. Caesar thinks it's silly that Izel thinks that everything will end when the debt is paid. Leaning over her body, he tells Izel that no debt will prevent him from possessing her to the fullest. Jonah will still be his property. He will never get bored of her, and they will be very good to each other. As a child, the first time they met, Izel Brish saw that creepy smile of his, that boy. Caesar Lysian held out his hand to her, asking what was wrong with the little lady, if she had accidentally gotten lost in the woods, and offered her his help. The young Duke Lesion gets even closer to Izel's face and calls her stupid because she didn't hear him the first time, and clutching her face hopes that this time he has made his purposes clearer than ever. At this point, the young Lady Brish finds no other option but to borrow the power from the ring and utters the word Karemvis. Izel throws Caesar away from her in the direction of a tall tree, saying she doesn't want to be with him. Caesar Lesion hits his head so hard against a tree that it causes his head to bleed. His eyes are filled with great madness, and he calls Izel a mad wench for daring to push him away. The young Lady Brish turns around to run away from him, but Caesar keeps shouting terrible things at her and demands her to return. Isel, with tears streaming down her cheeks, runs as fast as she can away from Caesar Lesion and asks very loudly for help. Rahan el-Kanax hears her cry for help from far away and tries to understand where his beloved Isel is. Meanwhile, Isel's unsuspecting brother, Sir Leo, dined in a friendly atmosphere in company with Lady Rose. Archduke Canax at this time returned to the tents where the dinner was being held. Since young Lady Brish was not at the dinner, Rahan decided to ask the knight Sir Harris where Isel was. The knight answered him that the young lady had gone for a short walk with Sir Alec and asked the Archduke what he was looking for Isel for. Returning to the forest, Rahan el-Kanax found the knight who was supposed to guard the young lady Isel bound with ropes by the knights of Duke Lesion, and concluded that Isel is back with Caesar Lesion and she is in great danger. Rahan makes his way through the forest, chopping down branches that are in the way, and for the sake of finding Isel, he is even ready to burn the whole forest. Rahan has a sudden premonition that someone is coming towards him. He turns around and sees Isel, covered in leaves, screaming for help. The girl had lost one of her shoes during her escape. She throws herself into the arms of Rahan el-Kanax and cuddles against his chest and begins to cry. Rahan strokes her head and reassures her that everything will be okay and tells her to be sure to call for help, and as soon as Isel asks, he will head off that Caesar Lesion. Rahan el-Kanax is not happy that first Caesar Lesion and the Knights of the Lesion family are bothering his dear Isel, and now her guards are useless and foolish. After calming down a bit, Isel asks Rahan el-Kanax to help her. The Archduke agrees to do so with a wicked smile and lifts Isel up on his arm to carry her into the house. When the Archduke emerges from the forest, he meets Caesar Lesion and the knights of his family. The young duke explains to Rahan that he has misunderstood and that he and the young Lady Brish had a difference of opinion during their conversation, and she simply ran away from him. Rahan el-Kanax tells Caesar and the knights that they should thank Lord Brish for something. If he didn't embrace her now, he would have cut off all their heads right here today, and asks them not to forget it today. Tomorrow it could happen too. Caesar clenches his hand into a fist angrily. The next day, Isel wakes up in her bed. Sitting next to her are the knights Sir Harris and Sir Alec, the maid Belle and her brother and father. Everyone is happy that Isel is awake. Leo helps his sister up and tells her that she may be dizzy, so he asks her to rise slowly. Belle tells the young mistress that she has slept for 24 hours and hands her a mug of water. Isel comes to her senses and tells everyone that she has something to tell her father and brother and asks the others to leave the room for now. The servant Belle and the knights leave young Lady Brish's room. After being left in a room with only her family, Isel apologizes to her brother and father for actually knowing that Duke Lesion has sent a letter demanding marriage, but she does not want to marry Caesar Lesion for anything and apologizes to them for being selfish. Count Brish and Sir Leo at first resent Isel for knowing everything, but then tell her that he is grateful that she thinks so. They never even thought of marrying her off to that unscrupulous criminal Caesar either, and they promise it will never happen. So Isel will always live in comfort as she is now, and they will consider her feelings and wishes. For them, it will always come first. Isel apologizes to her brother and father again, but they ask her to stop apologizing for everything. Count Brish asks his daughter what business His Excellency Archduke Canax had with her, since he came to her when she was unconscious. Isel is surprised that Rahan el-Kanax came to her. The Count asks his daughter to tell him what the Archduke wanted from her if she decides to ask him about it the next time they meet. Isel agrees and tries to remember what she said to His Excellency the Archduke that day, and assumes it was all sorts of strange things. The young mistress tries to remember what she said to Rahan when he told her that if she needed help with books, she should just ask for it. Isel suddenly remembers that she pressed herself against the Archduke's chest and cried and asked him for help. This made the girl feel very ashamed. At that moment, young Mrs. Brish is informed that His Excellency Archduke Rahan el-Kanax has arrived. Isel panics and asks her older brother Leo what she should do since she is still in her nightdress. Sir Leo calms her sister by telling her that everything will be all right and that he and their father will come out to the Archduke first, and she can change her clothes in peace. Isel is sitting on the bed, thinking that His Excellency Erzgerog can't be kept waiting long, so she should hurry up. Isel wondered why Rahan had come so soon without warning. Meanwhile, the butlers dressed in black tails, Sir Leo and Count Brish welcome His Excellency Erzgerog Canix to the Brish family's estate. Leo ponders the fact that Rahan did not even respond to their greeting, and why this madman has come unannounced. What is he up to? Rahan el Canix asks Count Brish how Mistress Brish is feeling, as he was very worried about her. Count Brish thanks him for his concern and interest in his daughter's condition, and replies that Isel is fine. A short time later, the young Lady Brish comes out in a lush, soft pink dress and greets the Archduke of Canix. Rahan looks at the Countess with admiration and says that he is happy that she looks in good health. Sir Leo pulls his younger sister Isel away from Rahan el Canix with words addressed to the Archduke that they have prepared tea and sweets in the drawing room, and with a haughty smile offers His Excellency to go there with them. Rahan smiled in return and agreed to Sir Leo Brish's offer. From the street, they all move into the drawing room and sit at a set table on sofas and talk among themselves. Count Brish tells the Archduke Canix that although the tea is not of the highest grade, he asks His Excellency to try it. Rahan takes a cup of tea in his hands and tells him that on the battlefield he has had to eat and drink much more than that, so he does not even know what he might not like. Everything seems delicious to him. The young mistress reminds Rahan that the food at the restaurant where he took her and her brother was very good, and though he does not focus on manners and authority, she knows him for what he is. Rahan el Canix thanks Isel for the praise. The young mistress, frightened, explains to Rahan that this is not what she wanted to do at all. Count Brish and Sir Leo are watching in bewilderment and don't understand what they are doing. Father Isel asks Archduke Canix to tell him what business he has come to their estate on his day off. Rahan el Canix explains to Earl Brish that he wishes to properly propose to the young mistress Isel Brish, who is here. The teacup falls from Count Brish's hands onto the carpet, spilling its contents all over him. Everyone is shocked at this unexpected statement. The Count tells his superior Archduke that it seems they may have misunderstood him. He doesn't understand what the madman is talking about. Rahan looks at Isel with a smile and asks her if she promised him that she would marry him. Her father and brother are horrified and ask if she really made such a promise to him. The young lady replies that she never promised him anything of the sort. Rahan suggests that she is just very shy, since the Earl and Sir Leo are now strongly opposed to their marriage. But when they are alone together, Isel is much braver, so she can only embrace him in private. Young Mrs. Brish asks His Excellency when she told him that. And then Isel comes to realize that she agreed to marry him because he helped her. Leo and Count Brish can't figure out if it's true or just a fantasy of that psychopath Rahan. Rahan el Canix tells Isel that he has just seen that they have a beautiful garden and has asked the Countess to give him a tour of it. Isel agrees to his request. Count Brish and Sir Leo have forgotten one thing again. Their precious child is a hothouse baby who is also quite absent-minded. And Archduke Canix, the most handsome man in the empire, is a psychopath with a passion for war and a brutal killer. Meanwhile, priests and knights from the temple of the goddess Enix enter Sepertirian's workshop as they investigate the case of El's sculpture. Sepertirian wonders why they have come here to see him. Priest Yuri explains to the owner of the workshop that they have learned that the owner of the workshop has put the sculptor El's works up for auction and asks him to tell them everything he knows about him. Sepertirian has no idea why the people from the temple have come to ask about Isel and tells them that he knows nothing about the sculptor, so he has nothing to say to them. Mr. Yuri is outraged and can't understand how he can know nothing, especially what he looks like and where he lives. Mrs. Russell asks the Carterian that he is not the one who put his statue up for auction. Carterian explains to the priests that because the sculptor is an old man with a very unhealthy temper, he doesn't tell him anything, and so he doesn't know anything about him. And at this point, he mentally apologizes to Isel for having to make her a mean and strange old man. The knight points his sword at the master of the workshop. Sepertirian, angry, starts shouting that he has already told them everything and replies that he knows nothing about him. The priest explains to him that the Roman papacy wants to know about the sculptor. Saratyrian stands there with his mouth open, clearly not expecting such a turn. Meanwhile, young Lady Isel and His Excellency Archduke Kanaka stroll through the garden of the Brish estate. Rahan remarks that the garden is beautiful. Isel agrees with him as her mother loved to take care of him, and then explains to Rahman that it was a misunderstanding to agree to the marriage as she does not remember what she was doing that day. The Archduke Canax, who has become unusually serious, asks the girl if this means that she does not want to marry him, but he adds that if she does not want to, or rather if her heart desires it, he sees nothing wrong with it and will try harder to earn her consent and to make her like him at least a little. The young lady Isel explains to Rahan el-Canax that she does not like him at all, but that she has not yet thought about marriage. So his marriage proposal was very unexpected for her, and she calls the Archduke a truly gentle, kind, and sincere man. Rahan takes Isel's hands in his palms and says that it is a happiness for him that she does not despise him, but on the contrary, admires and respects him, and therefore, in order for her to love him at least a little, Rahan promises to keep trying every day to win Isel's heart, and approaching her face, asks the girl if she will allow him to do so. The young countess is covered in goosebumps in an instant. Isel could not understand the meaning of the word try for a long time. From the next day, the Archduke Canax began to visit Count Brish's estate every day. One day, when Rahan again showed up unannounced at their house, Count Brish asked him if he had not come yesterday and the day before. Rahan simply nods his head with a smile. The Count tells Archduke Canax that as far as he can remember after he proposed to his daughter Isel, he has been going to their estate for a week now. Rahan smiles sweetly again and replies to the Count that he remembers correctly. Inhaling, the Count explains to Rahan el-Canax that he is talking to him completely seriously as he comes every day bringing lavish gifts. On the second day, Rahan presented them with expensive tea from the East and a tea service that only the Emperor has. The Archduke adds that the Misha did not fail to present his special father-in-law with a music box and a jewelry box decorated with precious stones, and his beloved Isel with cookies, cakes, and other sweets. Count Brish asks Rahan when he knew the exact size of Isel's clothes and shoes, so that they have no place to put all these gifts, and remarks that fortunately the Archduke has come empty-handed today. Rahan asks the Count if he really thinks so, without removing the silly smile from his face. Count Brish turns around and sees that all the paths and stairs are decorated with roses. When he leaves the room, Belle is delighted by this surprise and asks the maid who did it. Belle explains to the young mistress that His Excellency wanted to make a path of roses up to the front of her room. Isel asks the maid if Rahan made her do it. Belle answers her that she did not do anything, and Rahan had been doing it himself since dawn. He was afraid that the young mistress would wake up, so he did everything very quietly. Isel descends the flower-decorated staircase and sees Rahan, glad that he has come. Leo and Count Brish, watching this scene, mentally call Archduke Canax a lunatic. Rahan greets Isel and gives her a rose with the words that he has learned something on loves these flowers, so he wanted to give them to her. Isel thanks His Excellency and notices that there are so many expensive flowers. Rahan el-Canax tells Isel that he has gone through every flower store in the capital to buy every last flower. Isel asks him why buy up every last one. Archduke Canax explains to Madame that he wanted all the ale roses to be hers alone. Leo and Count Brish are sick of this psychopath and come to the realization that this can't just be left alone. Leo informs Archduke Canax that he must go to the palace at once and suggests that Rahan go there with them, because if they do not hurry, they may be late. Rahan el-Canax replies to Isel's family that he has taken the day off to spend time with his dear Isel and is therefore completely free from work. The Archduke hopes that Count Briss will give him permission to do so, because if the young Lady Briss continues to stay alone at the family estate every day, she will probably get bored here, so he wants to invite Isel to go out on a date in the city. Isel is excited to go out for the first time in a long time. Sir Leo is outraged by this insolence and shouts to the Archduke that they will never let Isel go with him. It is strange to the Pahan that Isel's family does not trust him, as he is called the best knight in the empire, and moreover he saved Countess Brish twice. The Count and Leo answer him that they understand him and agree to let Isel go with Archduke Canax on a date in the city. Rahan el Canax and the young Lady Brish are walking along the street of Dorit. The Archduke notices that this is their first date in their lives and asks Isel if she wants to go somewhere. Isel is confused by this unexpected question, but after some thought she answers Rahana that she wants to go to the workshop and see her teacher. For the first time, Rahan decided to help an impoverished and destitute Marquis of Taria, a roommate from his days at the academy, a friend he felt sorry for. He gave him the most expensive land on Darien Street where the workshop is located, sympathizing with him then. But now, Rahan el Canax regrets it and wonders aloud if he should not have shown him compassion and mercy. Isel hears Rahan muttering something and asks him about what he just said. Rahan el Canax turns to the young mistress and says with a smile that he too wants to go where she wants to go. And as he heads to his old friend's workshop, Rahan thinks about kicking Ceres out of the workshop this month. At this moment, the Knights of the Seven Brish, Sir Harry's and Sir Alec, are watching them. One of them tries to see if they are heading towards Darien Street. Harris tells him that the young lady seems to be heading to the workshop to study the sculptures. Sir Alec is surprised that his partner was so quick to answer where Isel is going and asks Harris if this is the first time he has followed the young Lady Brish. Sir Harris is confused. Shortly before, Count Brish summoned the knights to himself and informed them that Archduke Canax had taken Isel away with him, and though they knew him, they could not fully believe him. Sir Harris answers the Lord that they will go at once and follow Rahan el Canax and the young lady. Sir Leo adds to his father's speech that they can only trust them. It is for this reason that Alec and Harry's begin to pursue the Archduke and Isel. Sir Alec asks Harry's to tell when he went here to follow the young mistress. Harry's is annoyed by the fact that his partner is very noisy, and it would be better for him to watch Isel alone like he used to. Alec begins to cry at being ignored by Harry's. Idel and Archduke Canax enter the workshop. Young Mrs. Brish opens the door to greet her teacher and sees a picture of a knight in white robes pointing a sword at her teacher, Terera. Isel runs up to Saratherian and protects him with her body and asks him what is going on here and who the people in the workshop are, and clings to him harder and starts to cry. Saratherian asks Isel to stop. Saratherian just wanted to say that these are scary people, but a man even scarier walks into the workshop. Ceres promises Isolde that everything will be fine. Rahan el Canax enters the workshop thinking that he will throw Saratherian out of the workshop. He is not happy with how brazenly his friend dares to hug his dear Kale and asks him what is going on. The knight who pointed his sword at Saratherian bows to Archduke Canax and apologizes for scaring them. He explains that he was only interrogating them to get answers to an important question. Rahan el Canax feels insulted because when asked why Ceres is embracing Isel, he is told by the knight that they are interrogating him. Rahan demands that the knight answer the question of what order of knighthood he is from. The knights answer the Archduke that they are from the Holy Order of Knights. The state shares the power of the emperor and the power of a god. To investigate or take into custody the people of the empire, one must get permission from the imperial family. The priests explain to the Archduke that even though they did not act according to the law, the investigation could not wait. Even though they had behaved wrongly, he had received permission for the investigation. Mrs. Raziel, having examined the Archduke of Canax, asks him if he is the man who won the auction. Rahan replies that he has no idea what she is talking about. Raziel explains his speculation that he is very similar to the person who bought the El Sculptor's statue at the auction. Mr. Yuri interrupts the collector and apologizes to Erzgerog Canax for their tactless behavior today and says that he will do better next time to find a clue to the El Sculptor. Saratherian falls to his knees, relieved that the priests and knights are finally gone. Idel runs up to him and asks if she is all right. The teacher replies that he is fine, but his legs are just weak from the excitement. El Canax asks his friend if these knights are really from the temple and tauntingly asks him what sin he has committed. Saratherian is outraged by such a claim. He has never violated anything. Isel asks the teacher why they tortured him. Saratirin thinks about whether he can say that they came to him because they are looking for her so-called sculptor L. In order to hide the whole truth, he bears the threats. The teacher replies to Isel that it's just a misunderstanding and she doesn't need to worry about anything, and thinks that Isel's statues are so wonderful that rumors about them have reached the priests, wondering how they will conduct their investigation. Saratirin, distracted from his thoughts, asks the young lady why she came today, as she should not have come. Isel notices that His Excellency says nothing, and she cannot leave the workshop empty-handed like last time. Isel decides to tell her teacher that she needs money and asks him to sell her figurines at the auction. The girl is very embarrassed to ask such a thing of her teacher back in Rahan's time. If someone had bought them, they couldn't have gotten much money for them. Saratirin reminds Isel that he is auctioning off her figurines, and so that she can exist separately, he has been quietly saving all the money from the sales in this safe. Upon seeing the huge pile of money, Isel can't believe who all this money is from the auctions. Saratirin explains to the apprentice that this is not the whole amount, as it is the money from this year's auctions. The money from previous years is kept in a bank outside a private safe and gives her her certificate and key and all the sales receipts. They're organized by year. The young lady runs up to Saratirin and hugs him tightly, saying that she is very grateful to him. The tutor tells Isolde that he hopes she will not leave him now because he does not want her to fall into the hands of the Archduke Canix, and noting the gold coins tells Isolde that they weigh a lot, so if she wants to carry them, 5 or 6 men will be needed. Young Mrs. Brish replies to the teacher that she has the strength of 6 people so she can handle it alone. Rahan Pre-Canix asks Isel to come to him so she won't stand next to Saratirin, and asks her to wait while he searches for 2 people who can help her carry the money, and urges her to stay away from the teacher. Saratirin saw Rahan jealous for the first time. His heart boiled with jealousy, and while an angry Rahan searches for 2 people to help him, he thinks about what must be because of him. Saratirin decided to lend a helping hand to Isel. He never thought his former classmate would help her. Standing around the corner, Sir Alec tells his partner that the executed Archduke Canix is coming their way. Harris tells him that it can't be, as they would notice it. Rahan grabs the knights by the shoulders and tells them that he only let them watch him so that they would help him. Rahan el Canix leads the knights into the workshop. Isel asks Alec and Harris what they are doing here. Rahan explains to the girl that he met them by chance. Sir Harris explains to the young lady that when she went for a walk with His Excellency, they too decided to go out for a walk for the first time in a long time. They left for half a day to go and buy something in the shopping street, and met the Archduke who was passing by. Alec marvels at his partner's deft lies and doesn't even blush. Isel naively believes the whole story without question. Ceres replies that it's even better. He is leaving on business, so he asks her to put the gold coins in the chests so that the 2 of them can carry them, and promises Isel to return soon. Rahan el Canix follows Saratirin outside and asks him about what just happened. Saratirin asks Rahan if he knows about the rumors about Isel. He tells his friend that people say that her statues contain divine blessings. The temple and the Roman papacy begin to investigate Isel. The Roman papacy personally intervened. She even got the paladins involved. Both the imperial family and the temple are power-hungry, and if they reveal Isel's abilities, she will become a tool in their hands and will be used in a vicious and brutal struggle. Saratirin clarifies that it would be better if Rahan didn't tell Isel about it, because due to her character, she would feel guilty for causing her teacher problems and would eventually go and turn herself in. Rahan el Canix asks his friend not to worry, because it is obvious that Isel will be better with him than with her teacher, because in this case he will not have to worry that many people will know about her. While collecting the money, Sir Alec asks the lady where it all came from. She tells him that she was told the money came from the sale of her statues, but she doesn't believe it either. Rahan tells Saratirin that he doesn't want him to boast about helping Isel. Saratirin tells his friend it's not about him helping Isel, it's about her. He's only been selling figurines made by Isel, and the rest is hers. Rahan accepts his words and is going to follow through with the idea. In the meantime, he asks him not to interfere with Isolt's work or her defense. That will be his concern. The Archduke Canix's carriage pulls up to the Brish family's estate. The knights call the Count outside. Stepping outside the fence and seeing a pile of money chests, Count Brish asks Isel what it is. The young countess explains to her father that it is money from the sales of her statues and asks her father if it is enough to repay the debt. Alec takes out the chest and tells the Count that it is not all there is, and the rest is in the bank's vault. Count Brish doesn't understand the statues in question. Isel explains to her father that she went to a workshop to study sculpture, and the teacher auctioned off the statues she had made. The Count wonders that even if this is true, where is all this money coming from? Archduke Canix explains to Isel's father that the statuettes have a high value. Count Brish doesn't believe it's not a dream. In order to prepare the money to pay the debt, Count Brish was going to sell the estate, founder of the empire and monarch. In the first generation, Emperor Cartier personally gifted the estate to the then-living Count Brish. Due to both its antique style and its history and honor, it is a work of art in itself. Therefore, it is not surprising that when the announcement of its sale buyers lined up in a queue. However, it was never sold. Letters started coming in saying that potential buyers were unable to buy the estate due to unforeseen circumstances. So every possible deal fell through. The Count and Leo assumed it was all due to pressure from Duke Lezion, but they couldn't solve the problem. Isel promises her father that everything will be all right now. The girl's family pulls her into a tight hug. At that moment, a butler approaches them, apologizing for interfering, but young Mrs. Brish has a letter and it is urgent. Isel takes the letter from the gilded tray in her hands and examines it, and concludes that it came from the palace. But turning it around to read it, tells everyone that it is an invitation from Duke Lezion to a formal dinner. This news angers all the men standing across from Isel. Sir Leo asks his sister to give him the letter as it is unlucky and must be burned slowly. But Isel doesn't really want to do that. Archduke Canix tells Isel that it seems such an invitation came to him too, and so he suggests that the lady go there with him to Duke Lezion's dinner. Walking to the guest room, Leo flies in asking why Archduke Canix is attending their family council. Rahan explains it's because he will become family too. Isel tells His Excellency that it is not proper to say such things. Rahan smiles sweetly and apologizes for his tactlessness and for embarrassing Isel, and asks everyone to pretend he is not here. There is a family meeting in Count Brish's parlor about paying a debt to Duke Lezion with Isel money. Leo says that he doesn't want to look at those disgusting faces, so he asks to pay the debt quickly and say goodbye to those unpleasant people who dare to send such invitations without saying anything. Rahan el-Canix tells Sir Leo that he has exceeded all his expectations. The young master asks in what sense this was said. The Archduke explains his words by saying that at work, Leo is cold and reserved, but he turns out to be impatient and hot-tempered. Angry, Sir Leo asks Rahan el-Canix what it all means. Even one word from the Archduke spoils Sir Leo's mood. Since he is a war hero and has a high position in society, everyone respects and praises him, so people can't help but like him. Rahan asks the Count and Sir Leo to consider that there is still time so that the debt can be paid in advance, and asks if they think that Duke Lezion, who is prone to subterfuge, will find another way in time. Do they think that the trickster Duke Lezion will find another way in the meantime? Isel looks admiringly at Rahan el-Canix, tell him that she hadn't thought of that, and calls His Excellency very clever. The Archduke explains that the battlefield in some ways implements a similar tactic, when the enemy is given no options. Isel asks Rahan if he has used similar tactics on the battlefield. Rahan el-Canix's future brother-in-law, Sir Leo Brish, didn't know that Archduke Canix wouldn't pay more than a little attention to him. After listening to Rahan, Count Brish tell everyone that he will pay his debt on the last day at the last hour. This discussion has exhausted the Count. He still thinks that accepting Duke Lezion's invitation is not a good idea, and children there, even with the best knight of the empire, Rahan, is dangerous because it is not wise to go into the tiger's den. Sir Leo agrees with him. Rahan el-Canix tells them that Duke Lezion was not originally a tiger, so his home is not the lair of a tiger, but rather the lair of a raccoon. He tells Isolde that he doesn't want her to be scared, so he suggests going there together again as he thinks it will be some sort of strategy to defeat the Sora. Rahan tells them that Duke Lishan and young Lord Caesar deliberately proposed to Izel, and since Rahan is in a higher position than Oni and as a war hero who has just returned from the war, he must let them know that he proposed to Isel. Count Brish wants to object to the Archduke, but Rahan interrupts him, reminding him that he told them that this is a strategy because he is also somehow another opponent, and they are using him to defeat Duke Lishan and the young Lord Caesar, and Izel can reject him if he wants. Izel asks fearfully what His Excellency is talking about. Rahan explains with a warm smile that if she doesn't like it, she can refuse his marriage proposal, and adds that he is her knight and she is his queen, and he will do whatever Izel wishes, and kisses the young lady's hand. Count Brish and Sir Leo are angry that this psychopath has kissed Izel's hand again. On the battlefield, Rahan Elkanaks was a great and invincible commander. He is no match for anyone, one way or another. Young Mrs. Brish asks her father and brother not to worry, as she will go there with His Excellency Archduke Canax. Though in truth, because of the Lord Caesar, Isil does not want to go to this horrible event, but she no longer wants to avoid and fear him. In the eyes of Count Brish and Sir Leo, Izel used to be weak and fragile, but they realized that something has changed in her. The day of Duke Lishan's formal dinner arrives. His Excellency Archduke Rahan Elkanaks and the young Mistress Brish arrive, dressed in a sky blue gown with white bows at the sides. After they have entered the dining hall, people begin to whisper among themselves about what Archduke Canax is doing here. Caesar Lesion also wonders what Rahan is doing here, since he was not invited and he is very angry, especially since he came with the young Lady Brish. Archduke Rahan Elkanaks greets Duke Lesion and thanks him for inviting him to a formal dinner. The Duke and his son also comes out to greet the guests and thanks them for coming. And smiling feignedly, Lishan tells the Archduke that he had hoped he would come to the dinner. But before Izel and Rahan go to their seats, Duke Lesion asks the Archduke how it is that he came here together with the young Lady Brish. Rahan Elkanaks answers the Duke that the reason they came together is that he proposed marriage to the young Countess Brish. Young Mr. Lishan cannot believe his ears. Clutching his heart, he asks Countess Brish if she has not already agreed to marry him, because she has told the family. Rahan asks Isel if she is all right, to which the girl replies that she is fine, and she is sure that she can say it in front of everyone. Izel tells Duke Leshan and young Master Caesar that she thought about giving them her answer and apologizing, assuming they misunderstood her. So she says again that she does not understand the engagement proposal from young Master Caesar. Lishan is angry that Izel refused his proposal and accepted Erzgerog's offer. Archduke Canax puts his hand on his chest and tells him that it would be a little difficult, and he did not know that Mr. Caesar had already proposed to Miss Brish, and therefore apologizes to young Lady Brish. And he tells Caesar that according to the traditions of the Empire, if there is more than one suitor for a lady, it is fair to have a duel. And so Rahan Elkanaks challenges the young Duke to a duel for the right to become the suitor of the young Countess Brish. All the guests begin to discuss the fact that the young Mr. Lishan will become an opponent of the Archduke, Swordmaster Archduke Canax. Moreover, the Archduke is not only a brutal killer, but also an invincible warlord and 3 years younger. After a little thought, Archduke Canax tells the young Lord Caesar that he made a mistake under the influence of jealousy and did not even think about the difference in level between him and the young Duke. Archduke Canax's talent was that he was able to infuriate his interlocutor with just a few words. He is a master of pissing people off. Rahan Elkanaks apologizes to Mr. Lesion for having to cancel the duel. Caesar, furious and clutching his napkin in his hand, agrees to the duel. Then Caesar Lesion is caught in a trap. Everyone began to discuss the fact that Duke Lesion agreed to accept a duel from Archduke Canax and, of course, in secular society broke a huge scandal. Rahan and Izel head home in a carriage after the formal dinner. Erzgerog asks the young lady if something is bothering her. Idel apologizes to him for still thinking he will duel Caesar Lesion and asks if it is true. Rahan laughingly asks Isel if she is worried about him. Izel looks down and says that she knows that Rahan is an expert swordsman, but she knows that he will not be defeated and fears that the Archduke will get hurt because Caesar is a very cruel and cunning man who is not selective in his abilities. Rahan Elkanox mentally brags to Saratherian about how worried Isel is about him, and imagines that if Ceres had heard that, he would have told Isel that she should not worry about that crazy demon in the flesh, but about Caesar Letian's life, and specifies that of course she should not feel sorry for Caesar, but that she should not waste her nerves worrying about dueling trash and demon. When Isel worries about Rahan, he feels very warm. The Archduke asks Isel not to worry about it, as he can handle tens of thousands of people. At that moment, the coachman announces that they have arrived and can leave. Rahan tells Isel that with her support, he will be invincible. When they get out of the carriage, they stand opposite each other and look at each other with loving eyes. At that moment, Sir Leo Brish and his knights run up to them. This made Rahan angry as Leo spoiled the whole atmosphere. The brother asks his sister why she is so red and if she has a cold. Watching Leo's overprotective attitude towards Isel, Rahan thinks that he doesn't seem to realize that he has ruined the whole atmosphere. Leo takes off his jacket and says that lately the mornings and evenings have been very chilly at first, so it's easy to catch a cold, and puts it on his sister and asks her what she will do if she gets a fever. Isel replies to her brother that she is fine. Rahan Elkanox lowers his head and admits that it was his mistake and that he should have taken into account that the temperature drops in the evening. Angry Leo replies to Rahan that if he knows this now, he should not go out with Isel anymore. Rahan advises the young mistress of Britch tomorrow morning to prevent drinking tea with acacia honey, which he will send tomorrow. Isel asks the Pahan Elkanox if he is coming tomorrow. Bowing, the Archduke explains that tomorrow there will be a drill of a special order of knights, so he will not be able to come. Sir Leo knows that the drill will take place not only tomorrow but every day, and the captain will be absent. Rahan kisses the hand of the young Mrs. Brish, saying that they had a good time today. Sir Leo is very angry that Archduke Canox keeps kissing his sister's hand in front of him and promises himself that he will kill him one day. Rahan Elkanox thanks Sir Leo for filling in for him and always doing a sterling job. Leo can't understand what is wrong with Rahan's behavior and that he is definitely the Archduke he knows. Rahan asks young Mr. Brish to inform him immediately if he has a hard time among his subordinates. Leo replies to Rahan that he will definitely contact him and thanks His Excellency for his concern. This night, representatives of the Temple of the Goddess Enix arrive at the Imperial Palace. They are met by the butler and escorted to the drawing room where the Emperor Turban himself is waiting for them. The butler informs the Emperor that Her Holiness the Roman Papist has arrived.